Chapter 1048. Introduce someone to me? Hearing Noah's words, Wendy was puzzled. Didn't Noah already introduce his companions to Wendy? Now who else could introduce them? Under Wendy's puzzled gaze, Noah pulled out the small silver sword from his waist. Aster, come out. While saying this, Noah also activated the divine aura source in his body. Through his arm, he channeled it into the small silver sword in his hand. In the past, whenever Aster was carried around by Noah in this form, Noah would first go through this step when calling out to Aster, because sometimes, Aster could be in a deep sleep and could not be woken up by just calling out to him. Therefore, he had to use the method of channeling divine aura to wake Aster up. 1. Under the channeling of divine aura, the small silver sword in Noah's hand emitted a gentle glow. This was the sign that Aster was waking up. Noah, who had a spirit contract with Aster, could clearly feel the awakening of the spirit contract. However, when Aster woke up, the small silver sword that was emitting a gentle glow suddenly dimmed. Noah was stunned. What's going on? Full of doubts, Noah continued channeling divine aura into the small silver sword. However, this time, under the infusion of Noah's divine power, not only did the elven device in the form of a small silver sword not emit any light, but it also gradually retracted the brilliance on it. After a while, it returned to its tranquil state. Noah finally cried out in surprise. What's going on? Big brother Noah? Wendy tilted her head and looked at Noah in confusion. What's going on with you? Noah did not say anything. Instead, he frowned and stared at the small silver sword in his hand. Through the contract with Aster, Noah could clearly feel the familiar fluctuation of life and spirit aura from the small silver sword in his hand. This told Noah that his contracted spirit had indeed awakened. However, for some reason, Aster did not transform into his human form. It was not that he could not. It was that he did not want to. The divine aura that Noah channeled into the fairy device in his hand was like hitting cotton, and returned without any resistance. In other words, Aster did not accept Noah's divine aura at all. In other words, Aster was rejecting Noah. He was refusing to show himself at this moment. Aster? Noah called out to the silver dagger in his hand in confusion. What's wrong with you? Naturally, this sentence did not receive any response. The small silver sword lying in Noah's hand was like a dead object. There was not the slightest movement. If it was not because Noah could still know Aster's current situation through the fairy device, Noah would definitely think that something had happened to Aster. Noah hesitated for a moment, and said with uncertainty as he recalled the scenes of his interactions with Aster and Aster's personality. Adding on the trace of good fortune that came from the elven contract, Noah hesitated for a moment, and said with uncertainty, Aster, you aren't angry right now, are you? Of course, Noah's words still did not receive any response from Aster. However, this confirmed Noah's suspicions. For some reason, Aster's mood suddenly became bad, and he refused to show himself in front of Noah. This was not a rare occurrence. After all, as mentioned before, the fairies had their own will. Even if they had a contract with the fairy device, if they were in a bad mood, they might not lend their power to the fairy device. In serious cases, it might even cause the contract to break. It was also because of this that the fairy device had to master the sword dance. It was a ceremony that could please the fairies and improve their mood. It was also a ceremony that could draw out all of the fairies' power. Usually at this time, the fairy device would choose to perform a sword dance ceremony to restore the fairies' mood. Of course, one could also use normal methods such as offering the fairies their favorite food, or playing with the fairies to restore the fairies' mood. Simply put, it was like raising a pet and coaxing it. Aster. Noah was somewhat helpless. At least tell me the reason for your anger? Unfortunately, the small silver sword was still lying quietly in Noah's hand, and there was no movement at all. Noah Gidge. Wendy was getting more and more confused. Forget it. Noah scratched his cheek and put the small silver sword back on his waist and smiled at Wendy. Well, this friend of mine doesn't seem to be in a good mood. She won't even talk to me. Let's wait for her anger to subside before I introduce you to each other. Got it. Wendy nodded obediently. That appearance reminded Noah of the short time he spent with Wendy 7 years ago. Although they hadn't seen each other for 7 years, Wendy was still sticking to Noah as usual. She listened to Noah's words like an extremely obedient and cute little sister who loved to act coquettishly, making people love her dearly. Noah was the same. He caressed Wendy's little head lovingly and couldn't help but say that, "I really want Mila and Lisanna to meet Wendy." Mila and Lisanna? Wendy was startled. Then, as if she had thought of something extremely important, a trace of nervousness appeared on her young and delicate face. That, Brother Noah, are the 2 people I just mentioned your fiancés? Oh, Noah raised an eyebrow. You already know? Yes. Wendy nodded heavily. That's because I've been asking everyone in the guild to help me gather information on Brother Noah. That way, there was no way Wendy wouldn't know of Mila and Lisanna's existence. After all, with Mila's reputation, news of her engagement with Noah had already spread throughout the continent. Naturally, news of Lisanna had also spread like wildfire. Since Wendy had been gathering information on Noah, it was impossible for her not to know of this important matter. Wendy seemed to be interrogating him. She leaned her body in Noah's direction and stared at him intently. Will Mila and Miss Lisanna become brothers' brides in the future? That's right. Noah's reply was a little strange. Since they're engaged, they'll naturally have to get married in the future. Is that so? Wendy suddenly hung her head dejectedly. Even the corners of her eyes were filled with tears. As expected, they'll still get married? Seeing Wendy's dejected look, Noah was puzzled. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? No. Nothing. Wendy shook her head as if she had given up on something. She lowered her head and looked at her fingers as she spoke in a mosquito-like voice. I was just thinking that since Brother Noah already has 2 brides, will there be a third in the future? Noah was at a loss for words. His expression became awkward. I'm sorry, I can't say for sure that there won't be. Noah's feelings for Mila and Lisanna were the most sincere. There wasn't the slightest bit of pretense. However, it had to be said that Noah didn't dare to say that he would only marry Mila and Lisanna in the future. Other things aside, in the other world, Noah still had a 3-year promise with the Elysian Emperor. If the Elysian Emperor still didn't forget his original intentions and fell in love with Noah after 3 years, then Noah would definitely reciprocate the Elysian Emperor's feelings. This was something that had already been decided back then. Hence, Noah really couldn't say for sure. In the end, this answer made Wendy suddenly look up with a face full of surprise. So there really can be a third one? Noah was shocked by Wendy's sudden excitement. He couldn't help but take a step back. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Could it be that Wendy felt that he was too much of a playboy, and was starting to feel disappointed in his image as a perfect brother? While Noah was thinking about this, Wendy, who seemed to be very motivated, said seriously, "Don't worry, it's time for you to leave. I will work hard." Work hard? Noah blinked. Work hard? Work hard for what? Time passed by amidst Noah's bewilderment and Wendy's enthusiasm, until the news of the arrival of the last guild announced the end of everyone's break. Chapter 1049. When Noah and Wendy came out of the villa's room together, and came to the hall on the first floor, the scene that appeared in front of them directly surprised Noah and Wendy. This was because the entire hall on the first floor of the villa was filled with an extremely dangerous atmosphere, causing the tension of swords drawn and bows to firmly affect the hearts of everyone present. Ugh! Shrouded by the dangerous atmosphere, Wendy couldn't help but tremble, and hid behind Noah. Noah raised his eyes and looked at the situation in the hall. He saw in the center of the hall, for people were looking at each other, and with a heavy expression, their eyes were full of bitterness and hatred. Among the 4 people, 2 were very familiar to Noah. Impressively, it was Gray and Lucy. The one who was looking at Gray was a cold young man with short blue and white hair like ice. From the cold young man, Noah felt a magic that was very similar to Gray's magic, which made Noah more or less pay attention to it. And the one who was staring at Lucy was a young girl. A young girl with a pink waist and slightly curly red hair, dressed a bit flirtatiously. At this time, this young girl was looking at Lucy with a provocative look, which made Lucy so angry that she almost smoked. Without thinking, It was obvious that Gray and Lucy's relationship with the two people opposite them was very bad. But who are those two people? Just as Noah secretly raised his eyebrows, an angry voice followed. That human male over there. The one who said this sentence was Xia Lulu. With a pair of wings on her back, she flew in the air and landed in front of Noah, glaring at Noah. Xia Lulu, why did you take Wendy away without permission? Xia Lulu. Wendy peeked out from behind Noah and said with fear, I wasn't taken away by brother Noah, but by brother Noah. How can you leave alone with another man without permission? Xia Lulu was anxious. Do you know that I was very worried about you? Sorry. Wendy's face was sad, but she still emphasized. But brother Noah is not another man. This sentence made Xia Lulu both angry and helpless. Because only Xia Lulu knew that no matter what, whether it was right or wrong, as long as someone reprimanded Wendy, the timid Wendy would honestly apologize. Only when it came to Noah's matters, this little girl would actually show a rare tough side. And in turn, whether it was right or wrong, she would defend Noah. Therefore, Xia Lulu had long known that arguing with Wendy about Noah would not lead to a conclusion. It might even lead to a big fight between the two of them. Helpless, Xia Lulu could only sulk secretly, fly to Wendy's side, and stare at Noah. In this regard, Noah could only spread his hands and point in the direction of Gray and Lucy. What's going on? Who knows? Xia Lulu's tone was unfriendly, but she still did not ignore Noah, and chose to answer. Since the two magic shooters from the Lamia scale came in, they suddenly confronted each other. Sure enough, they are the magic shooters from the Lamia scale? Noah turned his gaze to the man and woman who were in a cold war with Gray and Lucy. But why would Gray and Lucy fight with them? Love. I know. Hobby came out of nowhere, and while secretly glancing at Xia Lulu, he leaned in Xia Lulu's direction with an infatuated expression. Gray and Lucy fought with those two people. Fought. Noah frowned. Don't come close to me, Tomcat. Xia Lulu also frowned. I'm not asking you. But he's asking you. Which male do you want to lean on? I'm here to treat you to fish. Hobby took out a fish from the bag behind him and handed it to Xia Lulu in a flattering manner. Noah doesn't eat fish. Seeing that Hobby went to pester Xia Lulu, Noah could only helplessly look to the other side and walk there. Alusha, who was staring at Gray, Lucy, and others, turned her head and looked at Noah. Noah? You came down? I just came down. Noah pointed in the direction of Gray, Lucy, and others. What's going on? Those two people. Alusha looked again at the man and woman confronting Gray and Lucy, and said, Those two people are called Leo and Shirley. In a previous mission, they fought with Gray and Lucy, but we don't know where they went. Now, it seems that those two people have joined the Lamia scale. Have they fought before? Noah looked thoughtfully at the young man named Leo, who was confronting Gray, and had a very similar magical aura to Gray and a cold face. Is it really just a simple relationship of having fought before? Can you tell? Alusha sighed. That guy named Leo's identity is a bit special. Special? Noah asked. What's special about him? He and Gray are fellow apprentices, Alusha said in a deep voice. He used to learn magic under the guidance of the same teacher, and like Gray, he used the ice-shaping magic. He's senior apprentice of Gray. Senior apprentice? Noah's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. Gray's senior apprentice? That guy named Leo is Gray's senior apprentice? Since they are fellow apprentices, then why does it seem that it's not strange for Gray and Leo to fight at any time? It seems that the relationship between Gray and Leo is even more incompatible than the relationship between Naz and Gray. Of course, Noah was not most concerned about Leo and Shirley, who were confronting Gray and Lucy, but the other person standing in front of the door. It was a tall and burly bald man, dressed in a rather unusual way, with the demeanor of a foreign minority. That person had been standing there since the beginning. When Noah came down from upstairs, the other party cast a pair of sharp eyes straight at him, staring at Noah. From the bald man, Noah felt an unusual aura and magic power. Although the aura and magic power were not comparable to the level of the veteran 10 great saint magicians like Makarov and Kildas, it was not weaker than Lax's and Jelal, who had fought with Noah before. Noah knew this person. To be more precise, it should be said that he had seen the other party's records and photos in books. The S-rank archmage of the Lamia scale. He has the title of Rock Iron, and is also one of the top 10 holy archmages. His name is Jurarikis. Noah looked directly at the bald man named Jura. I didn't expect that even he would come. While Noah was sizing up Tura was also sizing up Noah. Is that the grandson of His Excellency Makarov, the man who killed the president of the Phantom Lord, one of the 10 great saint magicians like me? Tura stared at Noah, his eyes gradually glowing. He's really young. He's as young as Jalal, the one who became one of the 10 great saint magi at a young age, but betrayed the council and became a traitor of the Tower of Paradise. Noah and Tura looked at each other from a distance. At a certain moment, a wave of demonic energy began to slowly burn on their bodies, rising into the air. The sudden appearance of the magic power shocked everyone present. They quickly turned their heads and looked in the direction of Noah and Tura. Noah, Alusha, Naz Gray, and Lucy all looked at Noah in surprise. Mr. Tura? Leo and Shirley also looked at Tura in shock. Brother Noah? Even Wendy couldn't help but leave Noah's side. Her pretty face suddenly changed. As for hubby and Xia Lulu, cold sweat trickled down their faces and dripped onto the ground. However, Noah and Tura didn't care about the shock of the crowd. It was as if at this moment, they only had eyes for each other. Their clothes fluttered crazily without any wind. At the same time, an even more astonishing burst of berserk magic power erupted from Noah and Turtledove's bodies with the two of them as the center, causing the air to become chaotic. Chapter 1050. Who? The extremely violent magic aura set off a wave of air, like a gust of wind, whistling and sweeping through the villa's hall. Wang! Under the rolling of the storm-like magic power, the entire space of the Blue Pegasus Villa seemed to tremble, and issued a buzzing sound. Facing each other from a distance, Noah and Jura were like the center of a typhoon made of magic. Violent magic aura continuously rose around their bodies, making the magic aura waves collide with each other, crashing back and forth in the space, shaking incessantly. Ugh! Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan from the Blue Pegasus were already intimidated by the amazing magic aura. Their bodies felt as if they were being squeezed by a heavy mountain, and they knelt on one knee on the ground, their faces full of cold sweat. Liar! Liar! Lucy, who belonged to the fairy tale, and Shirley, who belonged to the Lamia scale, also couldn't help but lie on the ground, their beautiful faces changing dramatically. Brother Noah? Even Wendy, who came from the cat shelter, was hugging hubby and Xia Lulu tightly. Her slender legs were trembling, and she looked shocked. Naz, Gray, Leo, and One Night could still stand upright, but they also felt as if they were firmly nailed to the ground, unable to move, and their faces were full of shock. Only Alyssa was not as shocked as the others on the spot, but there was a dignified look on her pretty face. He actually managed to intimidate so many high mages with just the release of mana. Whether it was Noah or Jura, they had not used any magic. They simply stood there, releasing the magic aura from their bodies. However, just by releasing demonic energy, the overly shocking demonic energy had already caused such an effect. This caused the group of people to be extremely shocked. This was the ability of the top 10 great saint magic shooters on this continent. This was because the competition between the top 10 great saint magic shooters was so astonishing. There were even rumors that once 2 of the top 10 great saint magic shooters fought, the earth would burst open, the sky would change color, and it would be called the end of the world. Of course, such rumors could only be said to be exaggerated. However, from this exaggerated rumor, it could be seen how powerful the top 10 great saint magic shooters were in the eyes of others. It was also because of this that in the past, in the council, the members of the council had forbidden private fights between the top 10 great saint magic shooters. Now that the council had disintegrated, such a rule was naturally gone. But the top 10 great saint magic shooters were just that, and no one would suddenly fight because of a rule. Therefore, this was a rare competition between the top 10 great saint magic shooters in front of Alusha and the others. Unfortunately, that was only what Alusha and Jura. At the very least, Jura knew what kind of monster he was up against. One of the top 10 great Saint magic shooters? Jura did not know if Noah was really as powerful as one of the top 10 great Saint magic shooters. However, the level of magic released by Noah at this moment was definitely not something that an ordinary top 10 great Saint magic shooters could have. If Alusha and the others were to observe carefully, they would definitely be able to discover it. A thin layer of sweat began to slowly trickle down from the top of La's head. That was a sign that Jura was exhausted. If one were to release their magic directly, the magic that was released would not return, and would be directly consumed. Even if Jura was one of the top 10 great Saint magic shooters, her magic was limited, and she would naturally be exhausted. On the other hand, not only was Noah calm and composed, but the magic that was continuously rising from his body did not show any signs of exhaustion. Instead, it continued to rise as if it was not enough. Over time, the atmosphere around Noah's body, which was completely disrupted by the rising magic waves, even began to let out a mournful cry. The sharp sound of the wind was like a strange whirlwind that kept fluctuating. Jura had to admit that Noah had not used all of his magic yet. However, Jiola herself was a little exhausted. If this continued, not only would he be wasting his precious mana, but he might also hurt his body and affect his fighting strength due to excessive and useless mana release. That was definitely an irrational behavior. Thus, Tara slowly retracted her magic power. Feeling that Jura was withdrawing her magic bit by bit, Noah narrowed his eyes and the corners of his mouth rose. He also withdrew his magic. For Noah, who had an endless supply of magic as his backing, this level of magic consumption was simply the same as a drop of water evaporating from the sea. However, that was only because Noah had the special energy bottomless hole of the mana source. It didn't take long before Noah and Turtledove's berserk magic power retracted back into their bodies, returning the scene to its original tranquility. I've long heard that Sir Noah has the ability to kill one of the top 10 great Saint magic shooters. Seeing it today, you really live up to your reputation. A trace of gentleness appeared on Jura's serious face. I was displaying my slight skill in front of an expert. Please don't take offense. You're too polite. Noah shook his head. Mr. Jura's strength has also opened my eyes as a junior. The title of one of the top 10 great Saint magic shooters is truly well-deserved. After the most direct competition of magic, Noah had more or less understood Jura's strength. Not as good as Makarov. Not as good as Kilda's. But compared to Jalal and Lax's, it should be about the same. Compared to Alusha, it was more than enough. Although it couldn't be compared to the top 10 great Saint magic shooters, as a newly promoted great Saint magic shooter, Jura was indeed worthy of the title of one of the top 10 great Saint magic shooters in the continent. In the world of the Shaped Moon, Noah could be considered to have seen many heroes from myths and legends. For example, Artoria, who was once the Night King. For example, the great hero of Greek mythology, Hercules. For example, the famous snake-haired witch Medusa. For example, the fierce dog of Kettle's mythology, Cuchulainn. In the ceremony called the Holy Grail War, these heroes only appeared in the form of servants. As for how strong their heroic spirits were, Noah didn't know. However, Artoria, who appeared as a servant and obtained the position of Saber, which had the highest requirement for heroic spirits, should be about the same as Alusha in terms of strength. In other words, Jura was at least stronger than Saber. This kind of strength, even in the eyes of Noah, who had the current strength, he couldn't find any fault with it. Therefore, what Noah said was indeed true. There are strong and weak great Saint magic shooters. For example, His Excellency Makarov's ranking among the top 10 great Saint magic shooters is very high. His strength is naturally amazing, but I'm only at the bottom of the top 10 great Saint magic shooters. Compared to His Excellency Noah, who was able to kill President Joseph, who was on par with His Excellency Makarov, I'm still far behind. Like a monk, Jura raised one of his palms and slightly bowed in salute. This time, with His Excellency here, the crusade mission is really foolproof. After saying that, Jura looked at Iye's direction. His Excellency Iye, it's about time to explain the mission of the crusade against the 6 demon generals, right? Hearing this, everyone in the room, including Iye, finally reacted. Thinking back to the pure magic competition just now, except for Alusha, almost everyone had some lingering fear. Sorry, Wendy. Noah half squatted down and helped Wendy wipe the sweat on her face. I was too impulsive. I was too excited and didn't consider that you couldn't bear it. It's not like that. Wendy hurriedly shook her head. Brother Noah is really strong, much stronger than me. Noah smiled and patted Wendy's head. Wendy will become stronger sooner or later. While talking, Iyi was like an actor who was about to perform a song and dance drama, posing and explaining in the center of the hall. Now let's start the explanation of the mission. Everyone, please look here. As soon as he finished speaking, a holographic screen suddenly appeared around Iyi's body. Chapter 1051. The sudden appearance of the screens of light around Iyi surprised everyone present. Those light screens weren't simple projections, but a kind of magic. It was called Ancient Book, which was said to be able to search for all knowledge that still existed today, compress the information, and transmit it to a specific target. It could also transmit the user's thoughts directly into the mind of others. It wasn't directly used in battle, but was inclined towards intelligence magic. And the person who possessed this magic was none other than the owner of the Blue Pegasus. Standing next to one knight, Blue Pegasus snapped his fingers. Suddenly, on the light screens that suddenly flashed out from the space, images abruptly appeared one after another, and some words were marked on them. Everyone took in the images that flashed on the light screens one by one. They saw that it was actually the image of a person. Appearing on the upper left was a young man with a fierce face, surrounded by a snake. Next to him, the words Cobra were labeled. Appearing on the lower left was a young man with his back facing the screen. Only half of his face was shown, dressed like a motorcar clan. Next to him, the words Lisa were labeled. Appearing on the upper middle was a man with a rough appearance, a tall stature, and a square face, holding a book in his hand. Next to him, the words Hidei were labeled. Appearing on the lower middle was a young girl with short blue hair, wearing revealing clothes, with a pair of fox-like, slightly tricky, and looked very thorny. Next to her, the words Anjur were labeled. Appearing on the upper right was a man sitting on a blanket suspended in mid-air, with his eyes closed, head lowered, as if he was sleeping. Next to him, the words Dark Knight were labeled. As for the last person who appeared on the lower right, it was a middle-aged man with dark skin, a face full of dark lines, holding a skull crutch, about 30 or 40 years old. Next to him, the words Brian were labeled. At the top of the 3 rows of images, there was a guild name labeled Orthodox 1. 6 Demon Generals Oration Cease. Impressively, it was all the members of the 6 Demon Generals Oration Cease, which had always only had 6 sorcerers. As you can see, this is some information we have collected about the 6 Demon Generals Oration Cease. Blue Pegasus said to the people present while tapping on a light screen in front of him. Although it is said to be intelligence, we have only collected the most basic information, such as their appearance and name. The rest of the information is very little, and there is no way to know their specific fighting strength. We only know that each of them has the power to rival a guild, and is very dangerous. Following Blue Pegasus' explanation, more words appeared on the images. Everyone, please take a look. Rang pointed at the words beside the images. Although we don't know the specific strength of the sorcerers of the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease. Hearing Blue Pegasus' words, Noah and the others also noticed the description of the battle marked in the images. Cobra was able to control the venomous snakes he carried with him to fight, and the magic he used was unknown. Lisa used a magic that could increase her speed, and used her super high speed to chase after the opponent. Hidei used a magic that could soften hard materials, and even the earth could be softened into sand in an instant to attack the enemy. Angel used a magic that could summon a star spirit, which was called Star Spirit Magic. Brian's magic was not fixed, and he seemed to have mastered many kinds of magic. He even had a large amount of knowledge about magic, and he often used dark magic. In the last Dark Knight, this person was not only good at magic, but also had no idea what level his combat ability was at. This was because when the 6 Demon Generals Oration Cease was in action, this person was just like what was shown in the images. sitting on a blanket suspended in the air and sleeping, and never made a move. However, it was said that when someone launched an attack on him, no matter what kind of attack it was ineffective. Seeing that the information about the sorcerers of the 6 demon generals' oration cease was not complete, a sense of mystery suddenly filled everyone's hearts. A sorcerer who can control venomous snakes, a sorcerer who can use speed magic, a sorcerer who can soften the earth. Dura's gaze swept across the images of Cobra, Lisa and Hitai, and his iron-like face tensed up. They really have gathered all kinds of sorcerers. A sorcerer who is a star spirit sorcerer like me? Lucy stared at Angel, her beautiful eyebrows slightly puckered. It would be good if we could know what kind of star spirit this angel uses. The last night? Alusha looked at the image of the last night thoughtfully. There is too little information about this person, and it is very likely that he will become a variable in the mission. We must be careful. Brian. Noah looked at the image of the dark-skinned man named Brian and narrowed his eyes. He is the president of the 6 demon generals, oration cease, ? That's right. The last night twisted his bloated body, stretched out his finger, and pointed at Noah. This sorcerer named Brian is very dangerous. In the past he was a member of the Magic Development Bureau, so he has a lot of knowledge about magic. This time, Brian is eyeing a magic sealed in the sea of trees in front of us, which is why he brought the 6 demon generals' oration cease here. A magic sealed in the sea of trees? Everyone looked at each other. That magic is called nirvana, Xiang said with a serious face. According to records, it seems to be sealed in the sea of trees by ancient humans. We don't know exactly what kind of magic it is, Ivan answered. However, since even the ancient people chose to seal it, it must be a very dangerous magic. The 6 demon generals' oration cease seem to be eyeing that magic, which is why they came out at this time when the council was disbanded. Lotus also looked around at everyone. After the decision of the presidents of the major guilds, everyone thinks that we shouldn't let the magic, which we don't even know how dangerous it is, appear, let alone let it fall into the hands of the 6 demon generals, oration cease. So our mission, other than crusading against the 6 demon generals, oration cease, is to not let them get the magic called nirvana? Gray scratched his head. It feels like it's going to be troublesome. In short, there shouldn't be a problem if we defeat all of them, right? Naz, who was standing at the side with a confused look, obviously didn't understand the conversation at all. He clenched his fist and fiercely smashed it into the palm of his other hand, and said excitedly, "Very good. I'm burning up. Watch me beat up all of those 6 demon generals, whatever." Shouting such a sentence, Naz didn't even give time to react and rushed outside with a face full of excitement. Wait. Alusha, Lucy, and Gray all took a deep breath. That idiot. Almost subconsciously, the 3 of them chased after him. You want to take the credit? Gray. Leo snorted coldly. Shirley, let's go too. Yes. Shirley nodded without any hesitation and followed Leo, running outside. Yoshi. Echo seemed to be affected and was a little hot-blooded. Let's go too. Oh. Lotus and Ivana responded at the same time. In the blink of an eye, except for Noah, Kara, Iya, Wendy, Xia, Lulu and Hubby, the rest of the people ran away without a trace. That. Wendy was a little at a loss. Then what should we do? Noah didn't answer Wendy's question, but his eyes flashed slightly and looked in the direction of Iya. Chapter 1052. Big Brother Noah? Seeing that not only did Noah not pay attention to the large group that rushed out, but instead looked at Iya, who was standing there with a post, Wendy felt a little strange. Aren't we going to chase after them? Yes, Sir Noah, Jura said with a serious face. We can't let our companions do whatever they want. By the way, why are you looking at me like that? Iya thought of something. He was a little scared, but also a little proud. He put his hands on his waist and made another post. Could it be that even men can't resist my handsome fragrance? Jura, Hubby, and Xia Lulu's mouth twitched, and they couldn't stay calm. Wendy, on the other hand, seemed to have believed Noah's words for an entire night. Her tender and pretty face began to change. In the end, She grabbed Noah's sleeve tightly and cried out in a tearful voice. Men can't do it. However, in the face of everyone's uneasiness, Noah wasn't as unbearable as he was when he first met them. Instead, he smiled calmly. I'm just admiring Blue Pegasus for being able to collect information on the Eurasian cease of the Barem Alliance that controls the entire dark world to this extent. No, that's not our credit, but because Xiangjuan's magic can play a crucial role in this regard. Ye made an exaggerated smile like he was acting. Coupled with that extremely unique face, it simply made people have the urge to turn around and leave. If we only relied on the Blue Pegasus, we wouldn't have been able to gather this much information. Is that so? Noah shrugged and suddenly said such a sentence. Then Mr. Iya, regarding the movements of the other two guilds of the Barem Alliance, did Blue Pegasus also notice? The other two guilds of the Barem Alliance. Jura was stunned. Even Iya, who was posing with a post, paused slightly, then returned to his original state. He closed his index finger and middle finger, and pointed at Noah with a handsome movement. The corner of his eyes seemed to be flashing with little stars. Why did Noah Kuan suddenly ask about the other two guilds of the Barem Alliance? No choice, Noah said with a smile. After all, the Barem Alliance doesn't only have one Eurasian cease, right? The Barem Alliance that controls the dark world of the entire continent is formed by the three most powerful dark guilds. This matter, everyone knows. And the three dark guilds, respectively Eurasian cease, the 6 demon generals. Grimoire Heart. Tartaros, the gates of the underworld. Among them, Grimoire Heart was publicly recognized as the strongest of the 3 dark guilds. The gates of the underworld, Tartaros, came in second. The 6 demon generals, Eurasian cease, were at the bottom of the list. Eurasian cease, Grimoire Heart and Tartaros. These 3 dark guilds are in an alliance after all. If Eurasian cease is forced into a corner by us, then it is very likely that they will ask for help from the other 2 guilds. Noah looked straight at Iya and said, so we have to be more or less on guard against Grimoire Heart and Gate of the Underworld. Hearing Noah's words, Jura fell into deep thought. Only Iya, who thought that Noah's words were funny, stood on his tiptoes as if he was dancing. In this regard, Noyajin, you don't have to worry at all. The so-called double-cross phenomenon also exists. Although the 3 dark guilds, Eurasian cease, Grimoire Heart, and Tartaros, are allies, as long as it doesn't involve their own interests, they won't take the risk of clashing head-on with us who stand on the side of light. Oh. Noah's eyebrows twitched. In other words, this time, our enemy is really only the 6 demon generals Eurasian cease? For example, wouldn't the Grimoire Heart suddenly interfere? That's right. Iya said with certainty. At least, other than Eurasian cease, we don't know of a second dark guild operating near the forest ocean. Is that so? Noah nodded and said. Then I'm relieved. The moment he finished speaking, Noah suddenly moved. Along with the sound of a tremor, an intricate geometric pattern suddenly spun out in front of Noah. An astonishing amount of mana gathered in it, and like a cannon, it was aimed in the direction of one knight. Wah! Including Wendy and Jura, everyone present was shocked. Iya's extremely unique face froze. His pair of pupils suddenly shrunk to the size of a needle tip. Under such circumstances, the magic gathered on the gorgeous magic circle suddenly turned into a fatal magic light beam. It rubbed against the air and covered Iya's entire body. Pung. In a corner of a villa in the suburbs, a wall suddenly burst open without any warning. A huge light beam shot out from within, and in the midst of the vibration in the air, its momentum didn't decrease as it violently shot forward. Wherever the huge magic light beam passed, the ground was dug open, and in an instant, a long gully was blasted open. Trees and rocks were annihilated by the terrifying magic light beam, not even leaving behind debris as they directly evaporated. The only thing that could survive the magic light beam was a figure with light smoke emitting from its body, its hand tightly holding a key that seemed to be made of gold. It rolled on the ground a few times before finally stabilizing its body, and stood up in an extremely sorry state. Looking closely, it was actually a young girl. She was wearing revealing clothes, and although her appearance wasn't bad, there was a kind of unruly feeling about her. She had a head of short blue hair. Her appearance was exactly the same as one of the images displayed by the ancient book. She was the star elf archmage from the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, Angel. Anger, who stood up from the ground in a sorry state, only had one thought in her mind. I've been discovered. Before she could finish her sentence, another voice faintly sounded, replying to Anger's words. Could it be that you think you can't be discovered? Saying such a sentence, a figure slowly walked out from the exploding wall of the villa that was filled with smoke and dust. Unfortunately, when I came down from upstairs and saw Iya for the first time, I knew that he was fake. Yes, that Iya just now was fake. That was why Noah attacked Iya. That's impossible, Anjali yelled out almost reflexively. Those who have been touched by Gemini not only have their appearance, but even their abilities and thoughts will be copied. How could they be discovered? Gemini? So the person who turned into Iya was the star elf you controlled? Noah glanced at the golden key in Anger's hand. So that's how it is. Gemini of the 12 zodiac signs. No wonder it has such a miraculous ability. Indeed, I felt the aura and magic of the one night from Gemini's body when he turned into one night. This proves that its duplication ability is extraordinary. Then why? Anger's face was filled with disbelief. Why was it discovered? Because it only has the copying ability, not the hiding ability. Noah said with a smile that was not a smile. Iya's aura was mixed with its own aura, so how could it not know that it was pretending to be Iya? Anger's pretty face immediately turned ugly. Chapter 1053. It was just like what Noah had said. After receiving the news that Lamia's scale had arrived, Noah came downstairs with Wendy and saw one night. At that time. From then on, Noah knew that one night was not normal. The reason was because he sensed that there was another aura mixed with one night's aura. Of course, at that time, Noah could not say for sure that one night was fake. Until with his outstanding sensing ability, Noah felt that there was an obscure magic connected to one night, as if it was maintaining the existence and power of one night. Noah understood that one night was fake. However, Noah did not know that one night was actually Star, and thought that it was just a special puppet. Otherwise, there would be no need for someone to transfer magic to it to maintain its operation. After sensing the obscure magic connected to one night, Noah followed the clues and used his sensing ability to find an unfamiliar aura hiding in the villa. Talking to the fake one night. 1. Was to fight for time to find the mastermind behind the scenes, and 2, more or less, he wanted to know something about the devil's heart. This was also why Noah did not rush out with Alusha, Naz, Gray, Lucy, and the others. After confirming which corner of the villa the aura was in, Noah simply made his move. After all, instead of asking a fake, it was better to ask the person controlling the fake one night. Angel of the 6 demon general Oration Cease? Immediately Noah looked at Angel. Obediently surrender here, and honestly answer some of my questions. Then I may consider letting you go. Ah, do you think I'm an idiot? Angel laughed, but there was not a trace of a smile in her eyes. You will let me go? It doesn't look like it. Is it? Noah looked indifferent. You don't look like someone who would surrender just because of this condition, do you? Isn't that obvious? Angier's smile turned dangerous. I am the Oration Cease, the 6th demon general. A golden key suddenly appeared in Angier's hand. Open it. The Scorpio gate Scopio. The golden key in Angier's hand shone with a dazzling light. Clank. A dazzling magic array suddenly flashed in the dazzling light, and gradually gathered light particles, causing the light particles to condense into a shape. After the light faded away, a man dressed in hip-hop clothes with a steel-like scorpion tail appeared on the spot. Oh. Noah was surprised. You have a second star spirit from the 12 zodiac gates? Scopio. Angel ignored Noah and ordered. Kill him for me. Yeehaw. The star spirit named Scopio made an extremely hip-hop pose, but the giant tail on his back suddenly stood up. Desert Destroyer. A burst of violent sand shot out from the steel tail of the star spirit named Scopio. It was like a tornado made of sand, whistling in the direction of Noah. Seeing the violent sand tornado enveloping his body, Noah's eyes flashed with a fierce glint. Just as Noah was about to make a move, a steel-like steady voice sounded. Rock iron bulwark. At this moment, the surrounding ground suddenly trembled. Rumble. Rock pillars suddenly rose from the trembling ground. Like a tie, they curved in a very natural manner and shrouded the area in front of Noah. Pung! The violent sand tornado suddenly fell on the hard rock wall, causing a burst of impact wind and explosion sound. The dense sand was like a fog, spreading throughout the entire space. I didn't expect that there would be people from the 6 demon generals Oration Cease mixed in. They thought that we were the ones on the crusade and had the initiative. Such thinking is too naive. Along with such a voice, Dura, who was holding a monk's staff, walked out of the hole in the wall with a heavy expression. His gaze was like a sharp sword, piercing Angel's body. Sir Noah, let's work together to take down this enemy. Don't worry. Noah didn't even turn his head as he looked at Angel with a playful smile. You can't escape. Hearing this, Angel was naturally unable to restrain her anger, but at the same time, there was a trace of fear in her heart. Although Angel had pretended to be Gemini for a night, and did not personally go into battle, she did not personally experience the horror of Noah and Dura's mana competition. But the strength of their mana made Angel, who was hiding in the depths of the villa, feel an extremely heavy pressure. At that time, the shock in Angel's heart was no less than that of Alusha, Naz Grey and Lucy. Therefore, Angel knew that the 2 men in front of her, no matter which one, had far more power than her. If there was only one person, Angier might be able to play some tricks and come up with something. But if it was 2 people, then Angel really did not have any thoughts. Noah smiled when he saw the trace of fear on Angier's face. What? Want to escape? Aren't you the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease? You can only be proud now. Angel bit her lips and said hatefully. Even if you have 2 archmages at the level of the 10 great saint magicians, we have 6 people in the 6 demon generals Oration Cease. You have no chance of winning. Whether there is a chance of winning or not is not up to you to decide, Noah said very calmly. Moreover, if you have 6 people on your side, then we have 13 people on our side. Who is the one who has no chance of winning? 13 people? Angel laughed disdainfully. Other than the 2 of you, the others are just slightly bigger worms to the 6 demon generals Oration Cease. They are not a threat at all. Is that so? Noah looked straight at Angel and smiled. If that's the case, then I have to tell you that your so-called 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, is just a slightly bigger fly to me. You're not a threat, but you're quite annoying. I think it's better for you to leave now. After saying that, Noah raised a hand. Wang. Immediately, golden ripples reverberated in the space around Angier. As the ripples spread out, silver chains with golden flowing lights suddenly shot out. They were like pythons pouncing on their prey. They circled in the air and coiled around Angier's limbs. Angel did not even have time to react before the chains wrapped around her hands and feet tightened. She was fiercely pulled off the ground and into the air. Like Jesus nailed to the cross, she was tightly wrapped by the chains that shot out from the golden ripples and hung up. Ooh. The pain from her limbs made Angel groan in pain. She did not have time to be surprised by this sudden attack and quickly ordered Scapio. Save me. Scapio abruptly turned around and pointed his steel tail at the golden ripples around Angeli. However, Scapio undoubtedly made a huge mistake. In order to save his master, Scapio had exposed his back to his opponent. Poochie. The next moment, a luxurious sharp sword suddenly shot out and pierced through Scapio's chest. Ugh! Scapio's pupils trembled slightly. Then the light in his eyes gradually disappeared. His body was also annihilated in the air in a burst of light. Seeing this scene with her own eyes, Angel's pretty face suddenly changed. Victory and defeat were decided at this moment. In the end, one of the members of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, who was known to have the power to rival a guild, was defeated in less than 5 minutes. Chapter 1054. Sitting on the red-carpeted stairs leading to the 2nd floor of the villa, Noah played with 3 golden keys. Are these the keys to the 12 zodiac gates? In the entire world, They were the most precious and one of a kind. These were the 12 golden keys that could summon the highest level of astral soul. These keys corresponded to the astral soul of each of the 12 constellations. At this moment, the 3 golden keys that Noah was playing with were the keys to the 12 zodiac gates. These keys corresponded to the Gemini, Scorpio, and Aries. Naturally, these keys were found on Anger's body. In order to eliminate Anger's resistance, if an astral sorcerer loses the astral soul key to summon the astral soul, then he is no different from a tiger without its teeth. Noah weighed the 3 golden keys in his hand and turned his gaze to Anger. And you don't have a second type of magic, right? On the first floor of the villa, below Noah who was sitting on the stairs, Anger was tightly bound by silver chains. She could not move at all. She could only glare at Noah fiercely, as if she wanted to eat Noah alive. With one look, it was obvious that Anger had been completely captured by Noah. We just started the mission and a member of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, has been captured? Xiaolulu looked bored. It seems that the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, is not as difficult to deal with as I thought. That's not right, Xiaolulu, Habi said righteously. Because her opponent is Noah, that's why she ended up like this. That's right, that's right. Wendy, who was hugging Xiaolulu, nodded her head. Big brother Noah is the best. Indeed, it was thanks to Sir Noah that we were able to find the Oration Cease sorcerer among us. Nodding in agreement, Jura nodded. If it weren't for Sir Noah, I'm afraid that we would have fallen into the scoundrel's trap, and even been in danger of disintegrating. Man overnight put on an exaggerated pose and spoke with a serious expression. As expected of His Excellency Makarov's grandson. It should be mentioned that Iye's face, which was full of seriousness, was now swollen and bruised. That was when Angel planned to use Gemini's Gemini to impersonate Iye. She beat Iye into this state, and threw him into the toilet. By the way, it was hubby who found such a night. Because he wanted to show Xiaolulu the skill of swallowing the fish to show his presence, he almost choked to death. He slipped into the toilet, spat out the fish, and found it on the way. Of course, none of this was important. One night. Why not? The important thing was that Noah and the others had indeed captured the captive of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease. Speak. Noah looked down at Anger, who was chained up tightly, and asked, "Where are the other Oration Cease?" "Who knows?" Anger smiled unhurriedly. "Maybe they sneaked in with me." I'm also considered a beauty, right? You can't even wait to enjoy yourself, right? Mr. Yi, please take care of this captive. You can do whatever you want. Noah didn't even look at Angela as he patted Iye's shoulder, and said in a serious tone, "As long as you can find out where her companions are, you will be a great hero who promotes the peace of the magical world. Don't have any scruples, just do it to your heart's content." For the peace of the magical world. Do it to your heart's content. Yi finally couldn't help but reveal a pig-like smile. I understand. Just leave it to me. This sentence seemed to have snapped the last string in Angier's heart, and a horrified expression appeared on her face. Wait. Angier shouted anxiously at Noah. You can't do this to me." "Why?" Noah replied indifferently. "Didn't you say that it's okay to do some bad things to you? Then do it yourself. If it's you, you can do whatever you want." Angier had to admit that this was the absolute truth at this moment. "You don't look at me like this. I haven't been touched by any man. If the first man who touches my body is that kind of guy, I'd rather die." Unfortunately, Noah had already turned his back, as if he didn't intend to care about anything. Then, Yi couldn't wait to walk towards Angel. Wait. Angel finally broke down. "I'll talk. I'll tell you everything." The corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled into a smile. Chapter 1055. Just as Angel fell into Noah's hands and became Noah's captive, a few figures quietly appeared on a cliff in the forest. Among them, a fierce-looking young man who was surrounded by a large purple poisonous snake suddenly frowned and was speechless. "Angel, that guy is actually so useless. How can he be called a sorcerer of the 6 demon generals? Oration cease. Hearing the words of the fierce-looking young man, the other 3 people on the scene all looked over at the same time. What's wrong? Cobra? A man who was dressed like a biker suddenly opened his mouth. Did you hear something? The man known as Cobra was labeled as Cobra in Xiong's ancient text. As for the person who was dressed like a biker, naturally he was Lisa of the 6 demon generals. Oration cease. It was not just Cobra and Lisa. On this cliff, there were 3 other figures. Holding a thick book in his hand, he was dressed like a priest. He was extremely tall, but his face was as angular as a square block. Sitting on a blanket suspended in the air like a delinquent, Dark Knight had his head lowered and was dozing off. Also, standing at the front of the cliff, looking into the distance, holding a skull staff in his hand. His skin was dark, and his face was covered with black lines. Brian. Other than Angel, the other members of the 6 demon generals. Oration cease. All appeared here. Cobra ignored Lisa and directly cast a fierce gaze on Brian. Brian, that guy Angel has been defeated. Brian's words didn't make Brian react, but it made Lisa and Hudai react, except for Dark Knight who was in deep sleep. And Jier was defeated? Lisa asked. Impossible, right? Didn't Angel successfully sneak into the Light faction? As early as when they came to this sea of trees in search of Nirvana, the sorcerers of the 6 demon generals had already guessed that the official guilds of the magic world would definitely send people to suppress them because of the actions of the 6 demon generals. Therefore, after receiving news that the alliance of the official guilds had arrived, Angeli was sent on a mission. Angel had 2 missions. First, use Gemini's Gemini to copy important figures in the allied army of the official guild. Through the ability to copy even their thoughts, you can find out important information about the allied army of the official guild. 2. Find an opportunity to deal with the sorcerers who are a threat to the 6 demon generals. And with Gemini Constellation's Gemini's ability, it should be impossible to be discovered. Are you doubting my hearing? Cobra said in an unfriendly tone. I heard it for sure. Angel was knocked down and captured by the enemy. Captured? There was a hint of surprise in Lisa's tone. You mean, not only did the enemy have a sorcerer who could defeat Angel, but they also had the ability to capture her? It's fine if it's just a captive. Cobra's voice became gloomy. That Angel, not only was she captured, but she also revealed our information under the threat of the enemy. She has already betrayed us. This sentence made the entire atmosphere of the scene turn sinister. I see. Brian finally raised his head and spoke in a deep voice. Did Angel betray the oration cease? Sure enough, it's because of money, right? Huey said with a smile. Only with enough money can people be tempted. Even if it's to make people betray, right? Shut up, Huey. I'm tired of your theory of money. Cobra smacked his lips and immediately asked Brian. Angel has already betrayed us. Our information, strongholds, and goals will all be exposed to the enemy. What should we do next? Brian didn't answer Cobra's question, and instead asked another question. Who was the one who dealt with Angela and even made her betray the 6 demon generals? Oration cease? A rather famous guy, Cobra replied. His name seems to be Noah Dole. I think he's the grandson of Makarov, one of the 10 Saint Magi. If Noah was here, he would definitely be shocked. Because Kebula really seemed to know everything. No, it wasn't that he knew. It was that he heard. Cobra had extremely terrifying hearing. This kind of hearing was no longer at the level of being able to clearly hear a person's footsteps, breathing, heartbeat, and even the contraction of muscles. Instead, he could even hear a person's thoughts. It was a kind of ability that was as foul as mind reading. It was this kind of terrifying hearing that allowed Cobra to clearly hear what was happening in the villa at the edge of the sea of trees. Clearly knowing Cobra's ability, the group of high mages of the 6 demon generals, Oration cease, firmly believed in Cobra's words. Noah Dole? Brian narrowed his eyes. The Noah Dole who used a golden wolf to kill a 10 Saint Magi not long ago? That's right. Cobra nodded. Not only Noah Dole, even the last of the 10 Saint Magi, that Rock Iron Dura also came. In other words, the enemy has 2 archmages at the level of the 10 Saint Magi. Lisa felt a bit uneasy. No wonder Angier was taken down. Angel's strength was very good. Otherwise, she wouldn't have occupied a place in the 6th Demon General's oration cease, which only had 6 members. Conservatively speaking, Angel's strength was definitely comparable to the S-rank archmages of a regular guild. But even among the S-rank archmages, there were strong and weak ones. The strong ones like Fairy Tales Gildus and Lamia Scales Dulla could be considered the strongest magic shooters in the continent. They were existences on the same level as the 10 great holy magi. The weak ones, like Blue Pegasus One Knight, were said to be strong by Alusha, but they were obviously not comparable to Alusha. It was even questionable whether they could stand shoulder to shoulder with Naz and Grey. Angel's strength, to be honest, was indeed a bit lacking compared to Alusha. Naturally, in front of 2 of the 10 Saint Magi, it was impossible for her to win. Makarov's grandson, do you still have the snake scale iron rock? Brian was thinking about something, and after a while, he suddenly asked, then what about the rest? The rest? Cobra laughed disdainfully. Other than that fairy queen, who is a bit interesting, the rest are just annoying bugs, not worth mentioning. Even if they are annoying bugs, if they are raised well, they can be sold for money. Hate AI said loudly. As expected, the most important thing is still money, right? Brian ignored Hate AI, who was loudly promoting the theory that money was the most important thing. He tapped the skull staff in his hand and said this. Let's start moving. Oh, Cobra laughed viciously. Can we finally start? Even Lisa was tempted to make a move and asked, what do you plan to do? Clean up the traitors? Brian turned around and looked down. Also, hunt down the beloved of light. Cobra, Lisa, and Hate AI also looked down the cliff and laughed. There, figures rushed out from the other side of the sea of trees. On the other side, in the villa under Noah's threat, Angel spat out all the information she knew. Among them, there was information about all the 6 demon generals' oration cease, except for the most mysterious one, Dark Knight. Cobra's ears are very scary. He must have known that I betrayed them, right? Angel laughed self-deprecatingly. Now I have no way to return to the 6 demon generals' oration cease. Chapter 1056. Angeli's self-deprecating words made Noah and the others silent. From Angeli's tone, everyone could tell that this girl valued the dark guild called Oration Cease a lot. Of course, it wasn't because Angeli liked the Oration Cease from the bottom of her heart. Otherwise, Angeli wouldn't have chosen to reveal everything here. Angeli probably thought that the title of Oration Cease was a kind of honor. It was something like a place to stay. However, the information obtained from Angeli still surprised Noah and the others. That Cobra actually has that kind of hearing? Noah raised his eyebrows. Also, as someone in the same guild as him, how could you know so little about the person called Dark Knight? Just now, Angeli told Noah and the others about the sorcerers in the Oration Cease. For example, Cobra's hearing. For example, Lisa's speed magic. For example, Hidei was a person who valued money above all. For example, Brian used to be a member of the Magic Development Bureau and had a lot of knowledge about magic. Among them, there was the Ancient Book, which was the source of the information about the Nirvana spell. However, the information about the Dark Knight was pitifully little. Angeli only knew 3 pieces of information about the Dark Knight. 1. The Dark Knight was Brian's adopted son. 2. The Dark Knight had always been in a deep sleep. 3. The Dark Knight seemed to have some kind of special magic. Even when he was in a deep sleep, this magic would still take effect, making all attacks against the Dark Knight invalid. Other than these 3 pieces of information, Angeli didn't know anything else. There's nothing we can do about it. Angier snorted. Brian said that the Dark Knight was the trump card of the Oration Cease. Only in a desperate situation can we wake him up. Therefore, even we don't know much about the Dark Knight. Then what about the Nirvana spell? Noah asked. That Nirvana spell, you don't want to say that you don't know about it either? Angeli was speechless. Although she didn't know why, the sorcerers of the Oration Cease led by Brian were active in the Sea of Trees. The reason was to obtain the Nirvana spell. Why did the Oration Cease want to obtain that spell? Was it just because it was a dangerous spell sealed by the ancient people? That was impossible. After all, no one would want to activate the Nirvana spell without knowing what kind of spell it was. A spell that even the ancient people had had to seal it. Who knew if it would be a dangerous spell that would instantly kill the person who activated it? The fact that the Oration Cease wanted to obtain this spell meant that the Oration Cease, at least, it was Nirvana's, was Nirvana. That is, this magic called Nirvana is beneficial to the 6 demon generals' Oration Cease. In other words, the Oration Cease definitely knew what this spell could do for him, so he wanted to get his hands on it. And Anjali's reaction also told Noah. She really did know what the Nirvana spell was. At this point, you still want to hide it? Seeing that Anjali was silent, Noah said with a smile, "Don't tell me you really want to improve your relationship with Mr. Overnight?" "I don't want to do that kind of thing." Anjali didn't hesitate to deny it and glared at Noah. "You're such a bad man. Can't help it. No matter how gentlemanly a man is, he won't like a disobedient woman." Noah curled his lips. "How you want me to treat you depends on whether you're obedient or not." Anjali suddenly bit her lips regretfully. "Anyway, I can't go back." Anjali smiled as if she was torturing herself. "It doesn't matter if I tell you. The so-called Nirvana is just a spell to manipulate people's hearts." Manipulate people's hearts? Wendy, Sialulu, and hubby looked at each other and stood up. Manipulate people's hearts? Iya put on an unnecessary pose and was also surprised. Manipulate people's hearts? Even Turtle Dove's face sank and looked like an angry King Kong. Only Noah frowned deeply. What's going on? About 400 years ago, this continent was still in an era full of war. Anjali seemed to have really decided to give up and said everything she knew. In that era, there was a clan called the Nilbit clan. In order to restore peace to the war-torn world, they created a spell that could replace the darkness in people's hearts with light. That spell was called Nirvana. Replace the darkness in people's hearts with light? Wendy tilted her head and said naively. That seems to be a very good spell, right? I have to say, only you would have this kind of idea, Wendy. Sialulu sighed. That kind of spell that can forcibly control people's hearts is definitely not a good thing, right? The more powerful you want to be, the more often you have to pay an unimaginable price. Noah said indifferently. That kind of spell that can distort people's hearts, since it was sealed, it proves that it has unimaginable side effects, right? That's right. Anjali seemed to be gloating, but she also smiled as if she didn't care. The spell called Nirvana can turn the darkness in people's hearts into light, and it can also turn light into darkness. In other words, it's a super spell that completely distorts people's hearts. Turning darkness into light. Turning light into darkness. Turning good into evil. Turning evil into good. The spell called Nirvana was something that could completely distort the light and darkness in people's hearts. Needless to say, if such a spell fell into the hands of a dark guild like the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, how would it be used? We can't sit here anymore. A hint of urgency finally appeared on Jura's rock-hard face. We have to find the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, as soon as possible. Not only Jura, but even Iyi, who had been acting cool on the side, became nervous. Don't worry. Noah frowned and looked straight at Anjali. Do you already know the location of Nirvana? Originally we didn't know. Anjali shrugged, as if she had finally recovered from Noah's threat. Or it could be said that she had thrown caution to the wind, and her expression became calm. However, some time ago, Brian obtained information about the location of Nirvana from a woman who had infiltrated the council and was a counselor. That's how we finally found out the location of Nirvana. A woman who had infiltrated the council and was a counselor? Noah's eyes suddenly flashed. Don't tell me it's Urudia from the Grimoire Heart? You know that woman? Anjali was a little surprised. We did find out the location of Nirvana from that woman. After all, there are records of this in the council. Because of this, a while ago, that woman suddenly appeared in Magnolia. Brian tried to find her and obtained this important information from her. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but be speechless. He estimated that when Brian found Urudia, Erudia brought Hades to Magnolia to find Noah. In other words, more than half of the reason why Brian found out the location of Nirvana was because of Noah. Just as Noah was about to continue asking, a sudden feeling caused Noah's actions to become sluggish. He came to a halt, and soon after he quietly sighed. "Looks like we have a guest." This sentence caused the atmosphere to suddenly become tense. Chapter 1057. Rumble. Following the slight trembling of the ground, waves of people rushed in from all directions around the Blue Pegasus villa. In an instant, the entire villa was surrounded. Each of them had a cruel and sadistic expression on their faces. With one look, one could tell that they were not kind people. Bang! In the next second, the villa's door was pushed open with a loud sound. With Noah in the lead, Jura, Wendy, and Xiaolulu all walked out of the villa. Even Angela was tightly bound by chains. One end of the chains was held by Habby as they walked out together. Wah! Wendy looked at the sea of people surrounding the villa. She was a little scared as she hid behind the villa's door. So many people. These guys, where did they come from? Cold sweat dripped down Ia's forehead as he posed. Don't tell me they're all from the Oration Cease. Those people are all guilds under the command of Oration Cease. Angeli giggled as if she didn't care at all. Although there are only 6 of us in Oration Cease, as one of the most powerful dark guilds in the dark world, we also have a lot of subordinates. What a miscalculation. Jura had a serious expression. I thought that only Oration Cease High Mage would come here, so I wanted to use the advantage of numbers to destroy this dark guild. I didn't expect that the situation would be completely reversed. Noah didn't say anything. He just swept his gaze around the sea of people surrounding the villa. After a while his eyes flashed. Only the guilds under Oration Cease are here. Are there no high mages from Oration Cease? After confirming this matter, Noah had an ominous feeling in his heart. He originally thought that the enemy was in the open while he was in the dark. He didn't expect that the situation would be completely reversed. When Angela sneaked in, Noah already knew. Perhaps the crusade plan of the 4 guilds had already been foreseen by the allied forces of the 4 guilds. But now, the arrow was already knocked on the bow. He had no choice but to release it. Therefore, Noah wanted to ask Angel about the location of the stronghold of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, and some important information so that he could regain the initiative that he had lost. Unfortunately, there was a high mage in the enemy's camp who had extraordinary hearing. With the existence of the cobra named Cobra, it was inevitable that some of Noah's movements would be exposed. Thus, in the end, Noah was still one step too late, and the people of the Oration Cease once again turned the passive into the active. Not only does the enemy's camp have some talented people with strange abilities, but as the leader of Oration Cease, Brian's brain is also very bright. Looking at the high mages of Oration Cease who were ready to make a move, they looked like a pack of wolves ready to eat their prey. Noah said without turning his head, "Mr. Tura, Mr. Iya, what are you going to do?" The current situation is very clear. Tura said in a deep voice. Our actions here are completely under the enemy's control. I reckon it was that viper sorcerer called Cobra who heard it. Iya's face, which was full of character, was tense. Undoubtedly, we have captives here. Aren't they afraid that we will use them as hostages to threaten them? This idea is completely unnecessary. Angela had a flirtatious smile on her face, but there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. Instead, it was somewhat ugly. Brian must have found out that I leaked the information to you through Cobra. He must be planning to treat me as a traitor and get rid of me together with him. How? How could that be? Wendy covered her mouth with an expression of disbelief. Aren't you companions? Companions. Angela glanced at Wendy and laughed mockingly. I know, in your eyes, the so-called companions are beautiful things that can help each other. For each other. You would even give up your lives for each other. That's why you can live under the sun. But we are destined to live in the darkness, the beloved children of the light. While they were talking, the high mages of Oration Cease around the villa narrowed the encirclement little by little, gradually shortening the distance between them and Noah's group. Sir Noah, Tura's hand that was holding the monk's staff slowly tightened. Her eyes also became sharp. Should we start a war here? Start a war? Wendy hugged Xiaolulu tightly and shrunk her head. Wendy's cowardice seems to have been noticed by the Dark Guild members under the oration cease. They laughed sinisterly and finally started to shout. Kill them. There are only 5 of them. One of them is a child. There's no need to be afraid. Let's just kill them. Similar shouts began to resound from the crowd in front, and it became more and more intense. Kill. Finally, with such a shout that reeked of blood, the crowd surrounding the villa finally surged in the direction of the villa like a tide. They're here, Wendy exclaimed. 5 people? And Jerry smiled with a complicated expression. Sure enough, they counted me in as well? We weren't counted in. Hubby said with cold sweat dripping down his face. Although we're not humans, we're cats. Are you still in the mood to complain at this time? Xiaolulu was going crazy. Tura's body began to emit a burst of pressure. Even one knight was in a fighting posture, which looked quite comical. Buzz. It was also at this moment that golden ripples suddenly flashed out from the space in front of the villa's entrance. Blades, swords, spears, halberds, and all kinds of luxurious weapons were ejected, turning into streams of light that shot out like beams of light, landing in the midst of the crowd that was surging madly. Bang, 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 bang. Suddenly, the laser-like treasures that landed on the sea of dark sorcerers belonging to the oration cease were like missiles, exploding the ground, setting off waves of wind and flames, blowing away the dark sorcerers one by one. The sudden and shocking scene shocked Turtledove, Ye Anger, Wendy and the others. They all turned their eyes to the front. There, the space around him fluctuated with golden ripples. Noah looked at the sea of people in front of him and said, Since the other party has a way to know our movements, then Alush's whereabouts may have been exposed. They may be in danger at any time. We should hurry and chase after them. There's no need to waste time on these insignificant people. Hearing this, Jula and Iya finally reacted. The first to react was Tura. Suddenly, a wave of magic power surged out from Turtledove's body and covered her entire body. Boom. In the sea of people in front, the ground suddenly trembled. Soon after, huge rock pillars suddenly burst out, sending a large number of people flying. Taking advantage of this, Noah opened his arms in Wendy's direction. Wendy reacted and directly threw herself into Noah's arms. Wait. Angela, who was bound by chains, turned around. Don't forget about me. Noah was speechless. He could only free his other hand and hold Angela in his arms. Then, under Tura's lead, they broke through the gap in the sea of people. Seeing Noah's group gradually break through the gap in the sea of people, one knight was stunned. After a while, one knight's face turned red. Don't leave me alone, man. With that, one knight was like a rubber ball, rolling into the gap in the sea of people. Chapter 1058. In the corner of the endless sea of trees, Noah's group was rushing towards the depths of the sea of trees at an extremely fast speed. Behind Noah's group, the sounds of shouting and clamoring became weaker and weaker. In the end, it was almost inaudible. This phenomenon proved that the Dark Guild sorcerers under the command of the oration cease had lost Noah's group, and were gradually closing in on Noah's group. Your Excellency Noah. Translator. Atlas Studios in the Sea of Trees. Tura was running forward at a speed that was completely inconsistent with her tall figure. Noah was holding Wendy and Angel tightly, but he seemed to be able to follow her with ease. What should we do next? Let's first meet up with Alush's group. Noah replied without hesitation. I'm worried that Alyssa and the others will be targeted by the 6 demon generals, oration cease. How big was this sea of trees? Even if it could not be compared to a real sea, it was still much bigger than a dozen or 20 cities. In such a vast area, there were many complex terrains in the sea of trees. It was extremely difficult to find anything here. Thus, the original plan of the 4 guilds was to first search for traces of the oration cease in the sea of trees, and only act after confirming their whereabouts. The reverse was also the same. Even if the oration cease already knew that there were people from official guilds coming to suppress them, It would be extremely difficult to find people from official guilds in this vast sea of trees. Considering this point, Noah originally thought that Alusha's group would not be able to cross swords with the enemy in a short period of time. Instead of following Alusha's group, it would be better to target Anger, who had created an impostor for an entire night. Who would have thought that the enemy would have a sorcerer with exceptional hearing? And it was very likely that she knew everyone's whereabouts. If Alusha's group did not know this when they split up or moved together, it was very likely that they would be ambushed by the Oration Cease. I'm also very worried about Naz. Hubby, who was flying beside Noah, said with extreme worry. I don't know how Naz is right now. Can we keep running like this? Because of the exhaustion of his physical strength, he was out of breath and panting like a dog for the whole night. He squeezed out a voice with difficulty, as if he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. If this continues, I won't be able to run. This guy. Xiaolulu, who was also flying beside Noah, did not know what to say. He was impersonated and knocked out in the toilet. He couldn't be of any use in battle and couldn't keep up when escaping. I don't even know why the Blue Pegasus is led by such a person. Noah blocked out everyone's voices and fell into deep thought alone. How do I find Alusha's group? At this time, Wendy pulled Noah's collar and said to Noah, Brother Noah, I can find Miss Alusha. His words caused everyone to stop in their tracks. Only one knight did not have the time to stop in time. And because everyone suddenly stopped, he lost his sense of propriety. With a bang, he hit a tree. Unfortunately, no one paid any attention to Yi. They all looked at Wendy in surprise. Wendy, Noah quickly called out. Can you find Alusha's group? Yes. Wendy nodded heavily. My sense of smell is a little different from that of ordinary people. Hearing this, Noah remembered that as a dragon slayer archmage, Naz's sense of smell was also unusual, much more sensitive than a dog's. Even if they were separated by a very long distance, Naz could find the person he was looking for by searching for smell. As a dragon slayer archmage, it was not surprising that Wendy had the same sense of smell. Moreover, Wendy was also a sky dragon slayer archmage. Unlike the fire attribute Naz, Wendy, who mastered the rare sky magic, was very sensitive to the abnormalities in the air, which greatly increased the sensitivity of this sense of smell. Over there. Wendy stretched out a small finger, as if swallowing the air stuck on the tip of her finger, touched the tip of her finger with her lips, and then pointed in a direction. The smell of Miss Alusha, Mr. Naz, Mr. Gray, Miss Lucy, and the others are all over there. Just as Wendy's voice fell, a strange phenomenon occurred in the direction she pointed. A violent flame burst out from the direction Wendy pointed, setting off bursts of flames that went straight into the sky. That is, Wendy, Jilla, and Xiaolulu were all taken aback. That's Naz's flame, Hubby shouted. Naz is fighting. Needless to say, Noah, like Hubby, recognized Naz's flame and understood this fact. Noah rushed out without any hesitation and rushed in the direction of the flame that rose into the sky. Seeing this, Jilla, Hubby, Xiaolulu, and others also reacted and quickly chased after him. Wait! Iya, who had bumped into the tree, covered his nose as he stumbled to catch up with them. The place where the flame storm was set off was on a cliff in the sea of trees. When Noah and the others came here, the scene that appeared in front of everyone made everyone's face freeze in an instant. Oh! On the ground that had been scorched black by the flames, people covered in wounds were lying on the ground in a disorderly manner. Among them there was Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lucy. Among them, there was Echo, Lotus, and Ivan. Among them, there was Leo and Shirley. Impressively, it was the group of magic shooters from Fairy Tale, Blue Pegasus, and Lamia Scale who attacked in advance. Naz! Hubby exclaimed. Leo! Shirley! Jilla couldn't help but call out. Xiangjun! Lotus! Ivan Jun! Iya, who was out of breath, didn't even have time to catch his breath and looked shocked. It's a lie, right? Wendy and Xiaolulu both looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief, and their eyes were full of shock. Seeing Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lucy lying on the ground with wounds all over their bodies, struggling to get up but unable to move, Noah's heart began to surge with an indescribable emotion. However, the more uneasy his heart was, the calmer Noah looked on the surface. He raised his eyes and looked ahead. There were a few figures there. Are they here? Cobra met Noah's gaze and grinned. I heard it long ago. Unfortunately, we're still late. Lisa raised one hand and adjusted the gloves on his hand, looking like he had just finished warming up. Although we didn't have time to kill these bugs, they can't fight anymore. No matter how you think about it, it's your fault for being too poor. Hitai declared regretfully. If you had money, you wouldn't have become like this, right? The Dark Knight was still in a deep sleep, showing no signs of waking up. Brian, who was holding the skull staff, looked directly at Anger, who was tightly bound by chains and held in Noah's arms. His eyes and face were emotionless. You're here too? Traitor. Anger bit her lips, looking angry but not daring to speak. You. Kara's angry voice sounded in a low voice. You guys, I heard it. Cobra turned his gaze to Kara and narrowed his eyes. The anger in your heart. Being provoked by Cobra like this, Kara's heart was filled with anger. Just as Kara was about to step forward, Noah stopped him. Looking around at Brian, Cobra, Lisa, Hitai, and the Dark Knight, then glancing at his companions on the ground, Noah's face was surprisingly calm. The next moment, Noah flipped his hand, and a scabbard suddenly appeared in his hand. It was a gorgeous scabbard that was flowing with bright golden light. Seeing this scabbard, everyone was slightly startled, but Cobra's expression suddenly changed. Not good. Stop it. Chapter 1059. Kebula's voice was so abrupt on the cliff that was scorched black like it was being roasted. This was because before Cobra spoke, everyone present, regardless of whether they were friend or foe, had their gazes stolen by the gorgeous scabbard that had suddenly appeared in Noah's hand. Therefore, when Cobra's voice sounded, Noah had already made his move. Bloom. An ideal place far away from the mortal world. A soft chant that seemed to reverberate from the distant horizon rang out clearly. Clang. The scabbard that was flashing with a bright golden light was heavily inserted into the ground by Noah with a powerful strike. Clang. The next moment, a burst of extremely dazzling light bloomed from the scabbard that was circulating with a bright golden light. It surged out like a tide and shrouded the entire space of the cliff in an instant. Under the cover of the dazzling golden light, the injuries of the magic shooters who were lying on the ground and riddled with scars were rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Nazi, who was still struggling to get up, only felt his body that was full of pain suddenly lighten. He looked at his hands with some surprise. The pain disappeared? Injuries. Gray also felt his body recovering at an extremely fast speed, which made him stunned on the spot. Injuries are starting to get better? It's so comfortable. Even Lucy showed a satisfied expression. What is this feeling? That scabbard. Alusha cast her gaze on the gorgeous scabbard that was blooming with a dazzling golden light, when she felt her body recovering at an extremely fast speed. Is the power of that scabbard helping us recover from our injuries? Not only Alusha, Nazi, Gray, and Lucy of the fairy tale, but also Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan belonging to the Blue Pegasus, as well as Leo and Shirley belonging to the Lamia scale, and others belonging to the Lamia scale. They were all bewildered as they looked at the gradually disappearing wounds on their bodies and fell into astonishment. Seeing this scene with their own eyes, Kara, Hubby, and Xiaolulu were also amazed. Only Wendy seemed to feel something from the light of the Avalon Noble artifact. She closed her eyes and her immature face was full of intoxication. What a comfortable light. As for the archmages of the 6 demon generals' oration cease. This scene undoubtedly made each of them shocked and angry. Although the archmages of the 6 demon generals' oration cease didn't spend much effort when dealing with the archmages of the fairy tale, Blue Pegasus, and Lamia scale, if these guys recovered and joined forces with Noah and Kara, it would be troublesome for the 6 demon generals' oration cease. Moreover, among these people, although the others were easily defeated, Alusha tenaciously resisted until the end. If they only relied on the 6 demon generals' oration cease, archmages, it would be very difficult to defeat Alusha. Therefore, in the end, it was Cabra and Lisa who joined forces, plus Hedi who made a move at the crucial moment to soften the ground, causing Alusha to lose her balance. Only then could Alusha be defeated. If Alusha recovered, it would be a big problem. At this moment, Brian shouted in a deep voice, "Lisa!" Lisa raised his head abruptly, and his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. Bang! Almost at the same time, a heavy muffled sound resounded. The moment the muffled sound rang out, everyone present reacted, and quickly turned their heads to look at the source of the sound. They saw that in front of the gorgeous scabbard that was blooming with a bright golden light, Lisa, who appeared out of nowhere, gave a heavy kick in the direction of the scabbard. However, Noah, who also appeared out of nowhere in front of the scabbard, raised an arm and directly received Lisa's heavy kick. What? Lisa was shocked. He actually kept up with my speed? Speed. Noah looked straight at Lisa and smiled indifferently. That's considered speed? Hearing this sentence, Lisa's heart instantly fell into an ice cave. Could it be that this man knew the true form of her magic? There was no answer to this question, because in the next second, another figure suddenly appeared beside Noah, revealing a grim smile. Unfortunately, I heard it all. That was Cabra. Cabra suddenly took a deep breath. Poison dragons roar. A huge tornado that seemed to be composed of purple mist, mixed with the whistling wind and violent magic power, rubbed against the air, and wherever it passed, it caused a rotten fishy smell, fiercely rushing in the direction of Noah. This scene shocked the magic shooters led by Naz. Dragon Slayer magic shooter? That's right. Cabra was a Dragon Slayer magic shooter. Like Laxus, he had the magic crystal of the Dragon Slayer magic implanted in his body, thus obtaining the poisonous attribute of the Dragon Slayer magic and becoming a poisonous Dragon Slayer magic shooter. Noah had already obtained this information from Angeli a long time ago. Therefore, seeing the tornado composed of poisonous gas sweeping in his direction with a violent momentum, Noah's face was like an ancient well without ripples. His figure suddenly leaped back a small step, clenched a fist, and punched heavily at the incoming poisonous dragon's breath. Bang! The fist collided with the violent poisonous gas tornado. At this moment, the violent poisonous gas tornado that collided with Noah's ordinary punch suddenly trembled and unexpectedly exploded without any reason, turning into sparks of purple wind, dissipating under Noah's punch. Cabra's expression changed, and after a while his ears twitched slightly. Then his expression changed dramatically and he shouted, "Don't use magic on him. Magic is ineffective on him." What? Led by Brian, Lisa, Hedi, and the rest of the Oration Sea sorcerers turned pale with fright. Magic was ineffective on Noah? How could that be? However, Cabra's hearing was extremely terrifying, and he could even clearly hear people's inner thoughts. Since Cabra said so, it must be because he heard Noah's inner thoughts and read this important information from Noah's mind. Coupled with the scene of Noah just exploding Cabra's magic with an ordinary punch, everyone had to admit this fact. Noah suddenly turned his head and stared at Cabra, his deep eyes flashing with a cold light. Mind reading? Then you should continue to try reading it. At this moment, the outline of the stone plate that existed in Noah's mind, connected to the 10 patterns, suddenly lit up, and each pattern flashed with a dazzling light, and the whole thing trembled. Storm. Giant. White horse. Dragon emperor. Beast horde. Priest. Phoenix. Elf. Thunder. Warrior. The 10 patterns that represented the power to kill gods, at this moment, blossomed with their own fluctuations. Then Cabra heard it. He heard the terrifying whistling sound of a gale. He heard the roar of a giant that reached the sky. He heard the sound of a scorching sun falling. He heard the sound of a berserk dragon roaring. He heard the sound of a wild beast running wildly. He heard the sound of a mysterious priest chanting a spell. He heard the beautiful cry of a phoenix. He heard the beautiful sound of a fairy flying. He heard the flashing sound of thunder. He also heard the sound of a warrior with a golden sword, who could even kill a god, shouting towards the heavens. Those sounds mixed together, making Cabra feel as if he heard the sound of the end of the world, and he was frightened. Chapter 1060. Ah, ah. Cobra's whole body trembled as he slowly retreated step by step, looking at Noah with a face full of horror. Cobra. Brian, who felt that something was wrong, hurriedly called out. What's wrong? Cobra. Cobra didn't pay attention to Brian at all, only slowly retreating. His heart was filled with extreme fear as he shook his head like a madman. No. No. Impossible. Seeing Cobra's abnormal appearance, Brian's expression finally changed. Although he didn't know what Cobra had heard, it was clear from Cobra's appearance that Noah was hiding something that could make this cold-blooded guy so terrified. At that moment, Brian finally realized what was going on. Perhaps Oration Cease had underestimated the person who was able to kill one of the 10 great holy magi. Don't be careless, Brian said in a deep voice. That man is not the same as those bugs, give it your all. After saying that, mana fluctuations finally emerged from Brian's body, making Lisa and Hito AI's spirit shake and become completely serious. The most precious thing is money. Huey's eyes suddenly flashed with a red light, and his body surged with an astonishing amount of mana. He pointed a finger in Noah's direction. Only by defeating you can I continue to make money. Am I right? The mana surging from Huey's body was like a wave, with Huey as the center, spreading across the entire ground. The mana fluctuations flashed, and the ground under Noah's feet immediately became soft like cotton, turning into a swamp with an astonishing suction force. Noah's feet were wrapped in it, causing him to feel as if he had sunk into a swamp, and his body was constantly being pulled down by the ground. At the same time, Brian raised the skull staff in Noah's direction, and a dark green flow of mana gathered in the mouth of the skull staff, revolving within it. Rondo of Evergreen. All of a sudden, the dark green mana that gathered in the skeleton's mouth turned into a drill-like spiral beam of light. Amidst the piercing sound of the air being torn apart, it flashed through the space and blasted directly in Noah's direction. The magic power gathered in this attack had far surpassed the magic power contained in Cobra's Poison Dragon's roar. If hit by this attack, even a rock would be directly penetrated, not to mention a human's body. Unfortunately, directly casting a spell on Noah was useless. In front of Noah's curse resistance, unless Brian's spell could harm even gods, it would be useless no matter how strong it was. Thus, Noah simply waved his hand in the face of the spiraling light beam that was shooting toward him. Bang! With a muffled sound, the spiral beam that could easily penetrate a rock was directly deflected, explosively shooting towards the boundless horizon. Now is the time. Instead of being surprised, Brian was delighted. Lisa. As soon as the voice fell, a figure suddenly appeared above Noah's head like a ghost. Mada. Lisa, who was spinning like a top, tightened his body to the extreme. He mercilessly threw a super powerful roundhouse kick at Noah's head, making the kick whip, which was accompanied by a whistling sound of strong wind, smash down on Noah's head like a heavy hammer. Feeling the strong wind coming from behind, Noah's eyes sharpened. Boom! A burst of terrifying mana suddenly burst out from Noah's body, like a pillar of light soaring into the sky, shaking the surroundings. Dong! Lisa did not even have time to react, and his body was heavily hit by the shockwave of mana that burst out from Noah's body. With a muffled sound, his whole body flew out. Not only that, the mana that burst out from Noah's body even shook the surrounding swamp-like ground a little. Immediately, Noah leaped and his body escaped from the swamp that had been blasted apart. His entire body was like a fired bullet. In the blink of an eye, he flashed and appeared above Lisa, who was flying backwards. His ice-cold eyes were directly thrown at Lisa. Lisa's heart tightened, and he clenched his teeth, his body also surging with mana. Whoosh! In the next moment, Lisa's whole body disappeared, and suddenly appeared in another direction, landing steadily on the ground. Lisa, who thought that he had escaped Noah's pursuit, did not have time to breathe a sigh of relief. Brian's voice came into his ears. Be careful. Unfortunately, it was too late to warn him at this time. Whoosh! His leg, which contained a powerful force, whizzed past like a wild whip and heavily kicked Lisa's side waist. Bang! Lisa's entire body was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Along with a sharp sound of wind, he heavily smashed into a rock wall not far away. Lisa's body flew out like a kite with a broken string. Poochie. A mouthful of blood spurted out from Lisa's mouth, instantly dyeing his mouth red. The sharp pain from his back made Lisa's whole consciousness seem to be blurred, and he even had the illusion that his waist was cut in half. The magic that Lisa used mainly focused on speed. And in terms of body, although Lisa could not be said to be the same as an ordinary person, he still belonged to the category of a human. Noah's LV4 level strength was definitely able to make an ordinary person's whole chest cave in. As a result, Lisa only spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his body was already considered strong. Lisa. Brian and Huey's complexion finally changed. But before the voice fell, a blurry black shadow tore through the obstruction of the air and shuttled through more than 10 meters of distance in less than a second. Brian and Huey only saw a blur in front of their eyes, and Noah's figure flashed like lightning in front of them, clenched his fist, and violently punched out, fiercely smashing towards Brian and Huey's head. Even without using any magic, Noah's speed with the LV4 level agility had reached a terrifying level. In the eyes of others, Noah's speed alone was comparable to Lisa's when he used magic. Even the average S-rank magic shooters could not catch up to his speed. So when Noah's fist was about to hit Brian and Huey's head, they only noticed it. At that moment, Brian and Huey's complexion changed greatly. Fight! At this critical moment, Brian clenched his teeth and shouted loudly. A burst of dark green magic gathered on the skull staff in his hand, and like a viper, it rapidly flickered and jumped on the skull staff's mouth. As the magic on the skull staff in Brian's hand trembled violently, the air around the skull staff also became chaotic. For money, Huey also went crazy. The magic in his body madly surged out, and the whole ground under his feet shook. In the next moment, Brian and Huey both released their strongest attack. Chongli Rhapsody. A dark green spiral beam of light shot out, carrying with it a ferocious mana energy. Activity Square. The ground that undulated up and down like blue waves suddenly shook like an earthquake. It turned into a huge wave and swept around the fierce spiral light beam. Together with the spiral light beam, it swept out like a bolt of lightning and attacked Noah's direction. In response, Noah's eyes flashed, and he sneered. A burst of magic flame burst out from his body and directly collided with the spiral beam that was rolling up like a wave of mud. Boom! At the moment of collision, the whole space was silent for a moment, and then an astonishing loud bang resounded. A wave of dense sand and wind spread out from the cliff, covering the entire corner of the cliff. It caused the ground to suddenly tremble at this moment. Like a spider web, cracks began to appear one after another. Not long after, the sand and wind that spread out blew towards the spectators. Everyone present could only reflexively raise their hands to block in front of their bodies. Immediately, their bodies were directly submerged by the sand and wind that swept over. Chapter 1061. The whistling wind swept back and forth on the cliff that was filled with sand and wind, causing some of the rocks to be lifted up from the cracked ground and shot in all directions like bullets. Danger! The quick-witted Xia Lulu pressed Wendy down on the ground before the bullet like gravel hit her. Everyone, get down! Jura shouted, and then she and hubby also got down on the ground. The sorcerers of Fairy Tale, Blue Pegasus, and Lamia Scale, who were already lying on the ground because of their injuries, did not have to worry about the gravel shooting towards them. They just raised their hands in front of their bodies to block the incoming sand and wind, protecting their faces and eyes. Everyone, please don't worry. Iya, the only one who was still standing, put on a posture and looked like he was duty-bound. Just leave it to me. After that, Iya jumped out, as if he wanted to block the gravel. However, almost at the same time, a rock bigger than Iya's face suddenly shot out from the sand and smashed into Iya's face with a bang. Man! In a unique catchphrase, Iya's pair of big nostrils once again spurted out blood and flew out like a kite with a broken string. Master Iya! Teacher Iya! Senior Iya! Seeing this scene, Xiang Lian and Yifan all shed tears. The rest of the people who saw this scene were full of depression. They wanted to laugh but couldn't, they wanted to cry but couldn't. They just felt depressed. Then everyone turned their gazes to the front. They looked at the sand and dust that had filled the entire cliff and was slowly dissipating. There, the originally hard ground had completely turned into a messy wasteland. There were traces of cracks everywhere, and gravel was scattered everywhere. Only one corner was relatively flat, without any gravel. However, on that flat ground, although there were no gravel, there was a thick layer of stone powder. Obviously, at the epicenter of the collision, the gravel that fell there was shaken into powder and spread all over that area. In the center of the area, there was not a single wound on Noah's body. Only his robes were fluttering in the wind. He stood in the center, looking calmly at the stone wall in front of him. Cough, cough, cough. Brian and Het Ai held onto the stone wall to support their swaying bodies. At this time, Brian and Huey were no longer as unharmed as before. Their entire appearance was extremely disheveled. Not only was half of their faces blackened by a layer of stone dust, but their clothes were also torn in many places. Of course, even if their faces were covered in black, the pale complexion of Brian and Het Ai could still be seen clearly. There were traces of blood at the corners of their mouths, and even their breathing had become rapid. Compared to the time when they were completely annihilated in the beginning, they were simply two extremes. It was obvious that Brian and Het Ai were seriously injured. Beside Brian and Het Ai, Lisa, whose mouth was dyed red with blood, clutched her waist and struggled to get up. Her miserable appearance was not inferior to Brian and Het Ai's at all. Looking at the three sorcerers of the 6 demon generals' oration cease, whether it was Fairy Tale, Blue Pegasus, Lamia Scale, or Cat Shelter, there was a faint look of shock in the eyes of the sorcerers. Previously, the 6 demon generals, oration cease, had defeated most of the magic shooters from the 4 official guilds with a power comparable to that of a ghost. Even Alyssa could not escape defeat. How could the 6 demon generals, oration cease, be defeated in such a manner by a person who is younger than many of the people here? So strong. Naz was extremely excited as he clenched his fist. Really strong. That guy. Gray could not hide his shock as he whispered. So he's already this strong. So powerful. Lucy secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva, as expected of someone who even Alusha, Laxes, and the president have to submit to. Really? Alusha's eyes flickered, and a gentle expression slowly appeared on her pretty face. You're no longer the child who couldn't even learn magic, Noah. Even Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lucy had such a reaction, not to mention the rest of the people. That man. Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan looked at each other and could see the shock in each other's eyes. Is he that strong? You're kidding, right? Shirley also covered her mouth with a look of disbelief. We can't even touch the enemy. I see. Leo's eyes flickered. Is that the person who grew up with Gray? Seeing that Noah did not have the slightest injury on his body, and the 3 oration cease magic shooters who were heavily injured and battered, they believed that everyone knew who the final winner was. No. Impossible. Brian had already lost his calm. He clutched his chest and stared at Noah. There are so many of us in the oration cease magic shooters, and we can't even take down a kid who's not even 20 years old. The most important thing is money. Hediai's expression also turned ugly. This kind of performance is worthless at all. Why? Lisa roared at Noah, extremely unwilling to give up. How can you be faster than me? Faster than you? Noah glanced at Lisa. Don't tell me you think I'll think you're using speed magic? This sentence made Lisa's heart tremble slightly. Your magic doesn't make you faster, it makes your opponent slower. Noah said this as he shook his head. No, it can't even be considered as slowing down your opponent. Your magic is actually reducing the perception of speed of targets within a certain range of you. This way, your opponent will think that you're very fast, but in reality, your speed hasn't increased at all. This was the true form of Lisa's magic. In other words, Lisa was not a user of speed magic, but a user of magic that could reduce the perception of speed of targets within a certain range, causing negative effects on the opponent. And the magic that was used on Noah would be bounced off by Noah's curse resistance. In addition, Noah had a physique that made him immune to all negative effects, so Lisa's magic was naturally ineffective against Noah. Therefore, in Lisa's opinion, Noah's speed was even faster than his. Little did he know, Noah's speed was not below Lisa's, let alone when Lisa's magic was ineffective. Retreat. Brian ordered without hesitation. We're retreating. As someone who had stayed in the Magic Development Bureau for a period of time in the past, he had an amazing knowledge of magic, and he had the mind of the 6 demon generals Oration Cease. So he could still distinguish what kind of decision was wise. After realizing that there was no way to defeat Noah, even if Brian was unwilling, he could only retreat. Retreat? Noah's eyes were cold. Can you retreat? After saying this, Noah was about to rush forward, but a voice suddenly sounded. Poison Dragon's Roar. The breath that contained fatal poison was like a purple tornado that fell from the sky, whistling as it fell. However, it did not fall toward Noah, but toward Alusha and the others who were lying on the ground. Noah, who was about to chase in the direction of Brian and the others, changed his expression. Without hesitation, he changed direction and rushed toward the poisonous breath that was falling toward Alusha and the others. Facing the tornado-like poisonous gas, he fiercely threw a punch. Bang! The powerful poisonous fog breath was suddenly blasted apart. Only then did Noah turn around and look in the direction of Brian and the others. There, Brian and the others had already disappeared. Looking at the empty cliff, Noah smacked his lips. Where can you escape to? Chapter 1062. In the depths of the vast sea of trees, at the end of a small stream, there was a cave. The entrance of the cave was covered with fence-like wooden stakes. It looked like there was an altar placed at the entrance of the cave. In fact, this cave was indeed an altar. In fact, this sea of trees was originally inhabited by a group of ancient people. That group was the one who created the magic called Nirvana, in an attempt to lead the entire world to the light, the Nirbit clan. This cave was the place where the Nirbit clan used to worship the god and hold the sacrificial ceremony. After 400 years, the Nirbit clan had long perished. However, this place was like a relic, stubbornly surviving. However, now this sacrificial ceremony was being held by the sorcerers of the 6 demon generals Oration Cease, and was being used as a temporary base. With Huey's help, Lisa lay on the ground and clutched her waist, her face full of pain. Although Huey was also injured, his injury was considered light compared to Lisa's. After all, Lisa withstood the full blow of Noah, who was enhanced by LV. For ability value with the body of an ordinary person. If it was a normal person, they would have died long ago after withstanding such a blow. To be able to withstand such a blow with a normal person's body and not die, it was estimated that only a sorcerer with a decent amount of magic in their body would be able to do so. Of course, after escaping, Lisa's nerves seemed to have relaxed and she completely fainted. Good dash. The moment Lisa fainted, Brian seemed to have suffered some kind of impact. He held his head and let out a muffled groan. Taking a closer look, one of the crisscrossing lines on Brian's face had suddenly disappeared at this moment. Ugh! Brian's face turned ugly. Who would have thought that a corner of the 6 demon generals Oration Cease would collapse just like that? In fact, in the 6 demon generals Oration Cease, there were already 2 defeated. However, unlike Lisa, who was defeated directly, Angier was captured alive by the enemy. Therefore, only one of the lines on Brian's face disappeared. If Angela had been defeated by someone else, one of the patterns on Brian's face would have disappeared long ago. The reason was naturally because each of the patterns on Brian's face represented an Oration Cease sorcerer. Therefore, every time an Oration Cease fell, one of the lines on Brian's face would disappear until all 6 lines disappeared. When he thought about how one of the famous Oration Cease was captured alive, and the other 3 were defeated by the enemy without suffering any damage, the anger in Brian's heart could not be extinguished. Infuriated, Brian glared at Cobra with a vicious gaze. What did you hear? Originally, if Cobra had participated in the battle and combined the power of 4 of the 6 demon generals Oration Cease, then perhaps they would not have fallen to such a state. However, no one knew what Cobra had heard. From the time he was still on the cliff, it was as if he had been having a nightmare, his face full of fear. That kind of fear even made Cobra lose his will to fight against Noah. He could only watch as Brian, Hotep, and Lisa struggled bitterly under Noah's hands, and only made a move at the last moment. Moreover, it was in order to escape. That Noah Dole, what was he hiding that made Cobra so afraid? Hearing Brian's question, Cobra only covered his face, as if he was unwilling to recall what he had heard at that time. He could not help but raise his voice. Don't ask me. I don't know anything. That's right. Cobra did not know anything. It was precisely because he did not know anything that Cobra was so afraid. That voice that came from Noah's heart was like the sky was falling and the earth was splitting, like the end of the world. What was it? If he knew the truth, perhaps Cobra would not be so afraid. Instead, when he heard that voice without knowing anything, when Cobra thought about what that voice was, he could not figure it out no matter how hard he tried, and thus fell into deep fear. However, there was also a saying in this world. Some things were blissful not to know. If Cobra really understood what kind of power that voice originated from, then it would not be fear, but despair. You bastard! Brian furiously looked at the terrified Cobra, but a trace of fear also secretly grew in his heart. To be able to make Cobra become like this the moment he heard it, what was Noah hiding? Brian, what should we do next? Hotep looked at Brian weakly. Continue to fight with that kind of guy? That's not a good suggestion, you know? I don't need you to tell me that. Brian's face was gloomy as he clenched his fists. However, it was not easy for me to find out the location of Nirvana from Urudaya in the Devil's Heart. I can see that Nirvana is about to be found and obtain the right to judge light and darkness. How can I give up here? Saying this, Brian seemed to have thought of something and cast his gaze to the side. There, sitting on a blanket floating in the air, Dark Knight, who had been quietly following Brian, was still hugging her arms and sleeping with her head lowered. What's wrong? Hotep noticed this scene and asked in a low voice. Do you want to wake Dark Knight up? Brian hesitated. Dark Knight had always been the trump card hidden by the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease. This trump card, unless it was absolutely necessary, Brian did not want to use it. However, if he did not use it now, could it be that he had to wait until the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, was completely destroyed before using it? Wake Dark Knight up. Brian's face hardened. Let Dark Knight go and kill those guys from light. Are you sure? Hotep's face was filled with uncertainty and fear as he asked. Even Dark Knight is not that guy's match. That guy doesn't even look like a human anymore. So what? Brian fiercely knocked on the wall. As long as we can get our hands on Nirvana, and turn that guy into a resident of darkness, at that time, we will have obtained an even more terrifying trump card. I advise you to give up, Brian. Brian! Cobra couldn't help but call out. Magic is useless against that guy. You should have seen it, right? I don't believe that even the super magic left from ancient times is useless against that guy. Brian coldly looked at Cobra. Moreover, even if it is really useless, at that time, we will turn everyone in the world into residents of darkness, and make that guy an enemy of the whole world. No matter how strong he is, he will still fall. Leaving these words behind, Brian seemed to have made up his mind. He gazed in a certain direction outside the cave. You all go and hunt those guys from light. I will go and remove the seal of Nirvana and get it. Seeing Brian's unquestionable expression, Cobra and Hotep looked at each other, and then looked at the sleeping Dark Knight. Chaos was inevitable. At the same time, on the messy cliff, Elusha and the others' injuries were finally completely healed under the healing of Avalon. Oh! Naz yelled at the sky. They are really healed. Xiang, Lotus, Ivan, Leo, Shirley and the others were more or less surprised as they touched their own bodies. After confirming that their injuries were completely healed, they all looked at Noah. You really helped us a lot, Noah. Elusha walked up to Noah and said in a low voice. If it weren't for you, we might have been completely wiped out. At the mention of this, everyone's heart became heavy, and the atmosphere became heavy. Chapter 1063. Fairy Tale. Blue Pegasus. Lamia Scale. In the entire kingdom of Fiori, these 3 guilds could be said to be one of the strongest guilds in the kingdom of Fiori. And this time, although it couldn't be said that all of their elites had been sent, no matter which guild it was, they had at least sent some decent magic shooters. For example, leaving Lucy aside, Fairy Tale had sent Alusha, who was not far from the realm of one of the top 10 magic shooters, as well as Naz and Gray, who were ranked first in Fairy Tale, excluding the S-rank magic shooters. For example, Xiang Lotus and Ivan of Blue Pegasus. Don't look at how they had always been there to act cool and show off. In terms of strength, even if the three of them couldn't be compared to Naz and Gray, they were still much stronger than Lucy. As for Lamia's scale, needless to say, as Gray's senior, Leo was definitely stronger than Gray. Shirley didn't seem to have much of a presence, but she shouldn't be weaker than Lucy, right? But in the end, under such circumstances, a group of magic shooters had joined forces to deal with a single 6 demon generals, but they were all wiped out by the 6 demon generals. Moreover, Angel wasn't present, Dark Knight had been sleeping all this time, and as the leader, Brian, hadn't made a move until Noah's arrival. The only ones who really made a move were Cobra, Lisa, and Hyethead. The three of them had easily taken down the elites of the 3 guilds, including Alusha. Thus, the strength of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, Sorcerer, could be seen at a glance. To put it bluntly, other than Alusha, the rest of them didn't have the strength to face any of the magic shooters of 6 demon generals alone. Even if it was Naz and Gray, it wasn't impossible for them to defeat the magic shooters of 6 demon generals in a one-on-one situation. But it could only be said that their chances of winning were very low. Even if they joined forces, it would still be difficult. Those guys are really too strong. Alusha's pair of beautiful eyebrows were tightly knitted. I'm afraid that among us, other than Noah and Mr. Jura, the rest of us would be in danger if they were to face the magic shooters of 6 demon generals, right? Don't joke. Alusha. Naz clenched his fist, with an angry look on his face. Those guys, I will definitely beat them all. The one who's joking is you, Naz. Gray was speechless. If it wasn't for Noah, we would have been completely wiped out by the people of 6 demon generals. You should recognize the reality now, right? That's right. Lucy sighed. Even Alusha wasn't a match for those people, let alone us. I don't care so much. Naz shouted as if he didn't care about anything else. In short, if I don't beat them all, I will never be satisfied. Please calm down. Jura took a step forward and looked around at the people of Fairy Tale. Although it's a bit strange for me to say this, I think that you don't need to feel so much pressure. No matter what, even if we aren't a match for the 6 demon generals, with Mr. Noah here, the problem won't be too big. Hearing Jura's words, the people present also turned their eyes to Noah. They recalled the scene where he single-handedly fought against 3 of the 6 demon generals, and completely defeated them without suffering any damage. One by one, they looked at Noah with some reverence. Especially Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lucy of Fairy Tale. Their faces were full of curiosity and bewilderment. The reason was naturally because of Noah's curse resistance. You guy, when did you learn how to make other people's magic ineffective? Gray doubtfully asked Noah. Indeed, your crushing magic also has the power to crush other people's magic, but you didn't use this magic just now. This was also the question in the hearts of Alusha, Naz, Lucy, and the others. The magic that Noah used was a super high-level destruction magic. This matter was known to almost the entire Fairy Tale. Since when did Noah learn another type of magic that could nullify other people's magic? And besides the people of Fairy Tale, the others were also curious about this matter. After all, without magic, a magic shooter would only be a slightly stronger person. If magic was ineffective against Noah, then in the future, any magic shooter who went up against Noah would simply be a nightmare. However, at the same time, everyone felt that it was understandable. Perhaps, only Noah who had this kind of ability had the ability to kill one of the 10 great Saint Magi. Although in the eyes of others it was Bio who killed Joseph. Seeing everyone's doubtful and curious look, Noah was a little distressed. How should I explain? Forget it, I'll just choose a half-truth. Actually, that was not magic, but a physique that I obtained. Noah said. Do you still remember what I told you about Aster? Aster? Lucy said uncertainly. I remember you said that the child called Aster was an elf. Elf. Alusha asked doubtfully. What exactly are the so-called elves? You can just treat it as a special star elf. Noah took out the silver dagger from his waist and showed it to everyone. However, unlike the astral elves, the elves can transform into the most suitable equipment for the contractor and provide the user with strength. Astral has the highest level of magic resistance and can eliminate almost all magic. After contracting with astral, I obtained a physique that can nullify magic. The weakness is that under such circumstances, even healing magic and support magic that are beneficial to me will be nullified. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Could it be that it wasn't magic, but a free gift from the contract he had with the so-called elf? That's great. Naz looked at hubby with envy. Hey hubby, why don't you have this ability? Love. Hubby said weakly. Because I'm a cat. A special star elf. An elf? Lucy was also envious. That's great. I also want to contract with such a star elf. However, to be able to nullify all magic, that's quite frightening, Turao exclaimed. Moreover, Sir Noah has not used magic or elves. It seems that our mission this time should be successful. In the beginning, I only came here to be a safeguard, to prevent the alliance from being destroyed. My real purpose is not to suppress the 6 demon generals or Oration cease. Noah shook his head. Now the 6 demon generals Oration cease has already been defeated by me once. I'm afraid that he won't appear so easily again. He might even ignore us and hide in the dark. After obtaining nirvana, he will immediately leave. At that time, we will be in big trouble. Noah's words made everyone's expression become serious. This was not impossible. So Miss Anger. Noah turned his head and looked at Anger, who had been silent all this time. Can I trouble you to take us to the stronghold of the 6 demon generals, Oration cease? Anger stared at Noah with a gloomy expression. Seeing this, Noah pointed at Iya, who was lying on the ground and being taken care of by Xiang, Lien and Ivan. His face was full of nosebleeds, which made Angel twitch her mouth. Anger was really unlucky to be captured by Noah. Chapter 1064. In the vast sea of trees, the magic shooters from the 4 major guilds moved forward in groups. They crossed the tall trees as they walked in a certain direction. Looking at the endless sea of trees, everyone's energy and patience were depleted bit by bit. Is it really this direction? Lucy's feet hurt from walking, and she couldn't help but rub her ankle as she complained. We've been walking for more than an hour. If we continue walking, the sky will be dark. Indeed. Alusha raised her head and looked at the gradually darkening sky. It will be dark soon. By then, it will be even more difficult to find the enemy's stronghold. How troublesome. Gray scratched his head and glanced at Angel, who was tightly bound by the chains. He asked Noah, who was holding the other end of the chain. Could it be that this woman is playing tricks? It's up to you to believe it or not. Anyway, I've already told you the location. Angel looked like she was going to do whatever she wanted. If you don't believe me, then don't go. At this point, Angel twisted her body and said coquettishly to Noah, who was holding the chain. I say, you've already tied me up for so long. Shouldn't you let go of me? Let go of you. Noah pursed his lips. In that case, won't you just run away? Even if I run away, I won't be a threat to you anymore, right? Angel said pitifully. You've already confiscated my celestial key. Without the celestial, I don't have the slightest bit of combat power as a celestial magic shooter. Moreover, I've already told you all the information. To you, I'm already useless. Wouldn't it be a hindrance to have me by your side? Even if that's the case, what do you plan to do if I let you go? Noah said indifferently. Don't forget, to the Oration cease, you are now a traitor. If the Oration cease finds you without any battle strength, I don't think I need to tell you what will happen to you, right? Allah. And Jia Air revealed a flirtatious smile. Could it be that you're concerned about me? You can think whatever you want, Noah said without turning his head. If you really want to leave, wait until we deal with the 6 demon generals, Oration cease, and I will do as you wish. Hearing Noah's words, the smile on Angela's face gradually disappeared. After a while, she spoke in a bored tone. You're such a boring man. While speaking, Naz, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped, and a rare serious expression appeared on his face. Everyone, be careful. There are many scents up ahead. Everyone at the scene stopped in their tracks. I smell it too, Wendy, who had been following Noah closely, said nervously. The smell of many, many people suddenly appeared. It must be the sorcerers from the subordinate guilds brought by the oration cease, right? Elusha's beautiful face tensed up. What do you think? Do you want to fight? Fight. Gray narrowed his eyes. We only have a dozen people here, and there are at least hundreds of thousands of sorcerers on the other side. If we really fight, even if we can win, it will consume a lot of stamina and mana, right? At that time, we won't have any extra energy to deal with the oration cease. Leo turned his head and looked at Tura. Mr. Tura, I also don't agree to fight. Actually, I don't agree either, Tura said calmly. If there are too many opponents, it will consume too much energy and waste too much time. We need to find the oration cease as soon as possible. Then let's take a detour, Shirley suggested. We have 2 Dragon Slayer sorcerers with very sensitive noses. We should be able to smoothly take a detour around those people. Xiang, Lian and Yifan, who were busy carrying Yi, whose face was covered in blood and who seemed to have fainted, nodded in agreement. However, at this time Noah raised an objection. We can't take a detour. Everyone was stunned. Only Njia said with a smile. I forgot to tell you that the oration cease stronghold is right in front of us. Immediately, everyone present understood what was going on. Indeed, they couldn't take a detour. This was because everyone's destination was where the sorcerers of the 6 demon generals' subordinate guild were located. In other words, if the 6 demon generals' oration cease were there, then not only would they have to deal with 5 powerful archmages who could match Alyssa, but they would also have to fight with hundreds and thousands of archmages. Just what I wanted. Naz seemed to be really excited. See how I'll send all of you flying. After saying that, Naz rushed out. Naz. Lucy cried out in surprise. That idiot. Gray also said angrily. There's no other way. Elusha's eyes narrowed. 2 rays of light flashed in her hands, and she tightly grasped 2 knight swords that suddenly appeared. We can only go. Although everyone more or less had a headache, at the same time, they also felt relieved. Tura was right, now was not the time to hesitate. If they hesitated because there were a large number of sorcerers in the oration cease stronghold, then it would not be a good thing. Although Naz's behavior was too reckless, it also resolved the hesitation in everyone's heart. This kind of charisma, probably only people like Naz who would fearlessly move forward could have it. Noah suddenly smiled and rushed forward with everyone. After rushing out of the monotonous sea of trees, a vast scene appeared in front of everyone. What appeared in front of everyone was a river. There was a small stream in the river. At the end of the stream, there was a cave with a wooden gate. Around the cave, sorcerers with weapons were patrolling. When they found traces of Noah's group, all of them showed fierce expressions. The people of the regular guild have appeared. Kill them all. In the next second, the sorcerers with weapons shouted while rushing in the direction of Noah and others. Get out of my way. Naz rushed forward without any hesitation. Don't block my way. A burst of surging flames rose from Naz's body, making him look like a huge fireball as he rushed forward. Naz, whose entire body was burning with flames, charged into the crowd like a chariot. Everywhere he passed, everyone was knocked flying, setting off a burst of flames and dust. The scene could be said to be extremely violent. Maintaining this momentum, Naz ignored the sorcerers and rushed into the cave. That idiot! Gray was about to explode in anger. He actually rushed in alone? Noah also looked at Naz rushing into the cavern, and then at the army of high mages rushing over. He suddenly said, Let's go. I'll take care of these guys. You guys go in and deal with the people inside. What? Everyone was taken aback. That's not right, Lucy said in surprise. We should block the sorcerers here, and you should deal with those guys, right? No, in the face of so many enemies, our physical strength and magic power are limited. Instead, We should deal with the generals. Alusha said calmly. And Noah is not afraid of magic attacks. Even in the face of so many enemies, there's no problem. Leave it to Noah. In addition, those who think they can't deal with the people inside, stay and cover them. Should I really say, as expected of Alusha? After making up her mind, Alusha didn't hesitate and directly rushed in the direction of the cave. Gray, Leo, and Kara's eyes flashed and they also rushed in. Watching the group leave, Noah glanced at the sorcerers rushing towards him, and the corners of his mouth gradually curved into a dangerous arc. It's rare to have a chance. Let me make a big fuss. Chapter 1065. Stop them. In the cave, a group of miscellaneous soldiers was also guarding. Seeing Alusha, Naz, Gray, Leo, and Kara rushing in, they were startled at first before fiercely rushing over. But these miscellaneous soldiers simply couldn't stop the rampaging high mage of the Dragon Slayer. Didn't I say? An even more surging flame burned from Nazi's body, illuminating his furious face. Get out of my way. Under Naz's violent roar, the huge fireball-like ball of flames rampaged through the entire cave, knocking away all the miscellaneous soldiers blocking the way, causing heavy collisions and mournful screams to echo as he continued to rush into the depths of the cave. It had to be said that Naz's rampage was more effective than any attack in the limited space of the cave. Those miscellaneous soldiers couldn't stop the violent Naz. For a moment, the entire cave seemed to have sunk into an abyss of fire, becoming extremely chaotic. Alusha, Gray, Leo, and Kara only needed to follow Naz, and they would be able to move unimpeded. It didn't take long for everyone to reach the end of the cave. Nazi suddenly stopped and twitched the tip of his nose. Then he cast his sharp gaze forward. You came? At the end of the cave, there were two silhouettes leaning against the wall. The one who spoke was Cabra, whose entire body was entangled by a huge purple python. I already heard it, fortunately. That monster didn't come over. All this time, only the rich have been able to obtain the final victory. Het AI seemed to be relieved as he looked in the direction of Naz's group, and opened his arms as if he was embracing the whole world. It seems that you are destined to be poor. The ones who appeared in the cave were Cabra and Het AI. Seeing that there was only Cabra and Het AI in the depths of the cave, Kara spoke in a deep voice. What about the others? What about the leader of your 6 demon generals, Oration Cease? Brian? The two of us are enough to deal with trash like you. Cabra grinned. As long as that monster is not here, no matter how many of you come, you won't be a match for us. Is that so? Alusha pointed her sword at Cobra. However, no matter how many of you there are, you won't be a match for Noah. And my goal is to defeat Noah. Naz bumped his fists and grinned. Therefore, people like you, I will definitely send them flying. You really have the guts to say that. Cobra's gaze turned fierce. If you can do it, then give it a try, regular guild trash. This job isn't worth anything at all. Het AI was a little disappointed, but he was still full of interest. However, as long as we obtain Nirvana, we will become rich, right? Even Gray and Leo were getting impatient when they heard Het AI talking about money every time he opened his mouth. So long-winded and annoying. After saying that, Naz, Gray, and Leo took the lead and the three of them rushed forward. Seeing this, Alusha, Kara, Cabra, and Het AI's bodies began to emit magic flames. A chaotic battle was about to break out. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In the open space outside the cave, a variety of treasures such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on shot out from the golden ripples like beams of light. They were like overwhelming lasers that shot towards the direction of the magic shooters that were swarming over. Poochie 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 poochie. Along with the sounds of tearing, the bodies of the magic shooters who were charging at the front were directly sliced by the noble artifacts. They fell to the ground amidst a series of screams. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The treasures that shot out from the golden ripples were as fast as lightning. Sometimes they passed through space, cutting through the bodies of the magic shooters, and sometimes they cut through the air, stirring up sharp sounds of breaking through the air as they fell to the ground. Bang 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 bang. The noble artifacts that fell to the ground were like missiles that directly exploded the ground, and set off an astonishing fire and impact. The people around the location were all sent flying and crashed into the ground, unable to get up again. In the blink of an eye, the hundreds and thousands of sorcerers were attacked by the noble artifacts that shot towards them. More than half of them fell instantly. No. 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 Ah. For a moment in the front, the group of sorcerers from the subordinate guilds of the 6 demon generals, one by one, the sorcerers let out terrified cries and mournful wails. Then in the chaos, one by one, their bodies were ruthlessly cut by the noble artifacts that shot towards them. They fell to the ground. Over time, as they watched their companions fall one after another within a short period of time, the remaining magic shooters were all terrified. However, if one observed carefully, they would definitely discover something. Although the scene was shocking and somewhat bloody, the people who fell to the ground did not suffer any fatal injuries. They only lost the ability to fight. Standing in front of the golden ripples that fluctuated in the space, Noah looked at the gradually decreasing crowd from afar. His face was like an ancient well without any ripples. He only raised one hand, causing the golden ripples around him to shoot out noble artifacts one after another. Along with the sound of the wind, the noble artifacts shot out. In Noah's Gate of Babylon, how many noble artifacts were there? Even Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon could be said to contain thousands of noble artifacts, not to mention Noah's Gate of Babylon. Although Noah's Gate of Babylon only had noble artifacts that could exist in the form of weapons and tools, it did not only contain the original noble artifacts. There were even other noble artifacts that were extensions of the original noble artifacts. The number of noble artifacts of this level could not be said to be endless, but it could be said to be an endless stream. In addition, the Gate of Babylon had the function of automatically recycling noble artifacts. Noah's ammunition was simply inexhaustible. Under such circumstances, how could a group of sorcerers who could only rely on numbers be able to do anything to Noah who had opened the Gate of Babylon? Therefore, from the beginning, Noah just stood there motionless, and the whole battle showed an overwhelming one-sided phenomenon. Following Alush's instructions, Lucy, Shirley, Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan, who had to stay behind to take care of the 6 demon generals, were all shocked on the spot when they saw the scene that could be called a massacre. Only the kind-hearted Wendy seemed to be unable to accept the bloody scene. Her small face was a little pale, but she still looked straight at Noah's back, her eyes full of longing. "Brother Noah, you're really amazing." Hubby and Xiaolulu were also on the spot. However, these 2 cats were also dumbfounded at the scene in front of them, secretly swallowing a mouthful of saliva. So about 3 minutes later, the last sorcerer also fell under Noah's noble artifact rain. Looking at the sorcerers who fell on the ground, the golden ripples behind Noah began to shrink and disappear one by one. It's done. Great. Lucy, Wendy, Shirley, and the 3 sorcerers of the Blue Pegasus all cheered. Just as they were about to approach Noah, they were stopped by Noah, who raised a hand. Slightly raising his eyes, Noah looked in the direction of the surrounding trees, and said faintly, "The guy hiding there has been watching for so long, it's time to come out, right?" As soon as the voice fell, the whole space suddenly fell into a strange silence. Lucy, Wendy, and the others only then reacted. There was actually a person hiding here. The next moment, where Noah's eyes were, a figure finally appeared slowly. Seeing the figure, Angela, who was at the back, narrowed her eyes and cried out in shock. "Dark Knight." Chapter 1066. Dark Knight. And Jian's exclamation reminded everyone present of what had happened. Yes. The person who slowly walked out of the thicket was none other than the last sorcerer of the 6 demon generals, the Oration Cease. He had always been sitting on a blanket suspended in mid-air with his arms crossed, and his head lowered in a deep sleep. At this moment, the ace magic shooter named Dark Knight, who was also known as the Oration Cease, by Anger, was lazily walking towards them step by step. They didn't know if it was an illusion or not. As the night approached, everyone present felt that the surrounding space had dimmed slightly. It was as if they were shrouded by a pitch-black moonlight. It was quiet and eerie. Angeli's expression was extremely bewildered. "Have you woken up?" "I have just woken up." Dark Knight didn't stop walking. He only turned his deep eyeshadow in Angeli's direction and narrowed his eyes. Did you really betray father? Angeli? Being stared at by Dark Knight's eyes, Angeli only felt a heavy pressure pressing down on her heart, causing her to involuntarily take a step back. Seeing this, Dark Knight laughed, a laugh that made people's hair stand on end. When father woke me up, he told me that I could hunt at will. It seems that you are also in my hunting range, Angeli. Angeli's little face turned pale. In the 6 demon generals' oration cease, Angel was not afraid of Cobra, Lissa, Hitai, or even Brian. She only had an indescribable fear of the Dark Knight. There was no other reason. This person had always been regarded by Brian as the last resort of the 6 demon generals. Although he had always been with the rest of the 6 demon generals, he had always been in a state of deep sleep, which made him seem extremely mysterious. If it was the rest of the 6 demon generals, Angeli was confident that no matter who it was, even if she couldn't win, she wouldn't lose. But facing Dark Knight, Angeli really didn't know what kind of power this person had. This trace of fear towards Dark Knight came from the mysteriousness and unknown of Dark Knight. Angeli's Star Soul key had been confiscated and she had no means of fighting. If Dark Knight really wanted to kill Angeli, then Angeli definitely wouldn't be able to fight back. Seeing Angeli's pale face, Dark Knight seemed to have lost interest in Angeli. He turned his gaze towards Noah's direction and the corner of his mouth hooked up in a feminine arc. I heard that magic is ineffective against you? Dark Knight didn't even look at the archmages of the 6 demon generals' subordinate guilds who were lying on the ground. Dark Knight was actually more concerned about Noah's constitution than the safety of his companions. And then? Noah glanced at Dark Knight. What are you trying to say? No, it's nothing. Dark Knight stopped and spread his hands. I'm just slightly interested in you. Who has the same kind of magic? According to the information Angeli revealed, Dark Knight seemed to have some kind of method that could make magic ineffective. Therefore, even if he was in a state of hibernation, this method would still work, making the enemy unable to even touch Dark Knight's hibernation state. In this aspect, Dark Knight was indeed somewhat similar to Noah. But can you only make magic ineffective? Dark Knight showed Noah an arrogant and feminine smile. My magic can nullify any attack, Linley said. After saying this, Dark Knight slowly extended a hand towards Noah's direction. A whirlpool-like magic suddenly fluctuated in his palm. Noah's gaze slightly trembled. Pung! In the next moment, the space where Noah was suddenly filled with a frenzied airflow without any warning. Like an explosion, it exploded and shook in all directions. Noah! Lucy cried out in alarm. Brother Noah! Wendy covered her mouth and almost wanted to rush out. However, at this time, in the frenzied airflow that suddenly exploded like an explosion, Noah's figure suddenly retreated. With a point on the ground, his figure nimbly jumped a few times and steadily landed on the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. However, when everyone saw Noah's situation, they were all speechless. Because at this moment, Noah's clothes seemed to have been cut by a knife and became tattered. This sorry state made everyone's heart suddenly tremble, and they were all speechless. Whether it was against Brian, Cabra, Hitai, and Lisa of the 6 demon generals, or against the group of magic shooters of the subordinate guilds of the 6 demon generals, Noah had always been invincible. As if even if the sky fell down he would not be harmed at all, causing everyone to be in awe of Noah's strength. At this time, although Noah did not seem to have suffered any injuries, his sorry state was enough to make everyone worry. See, Dark Knight, who extended a hand towards Noah's direction, laughed arrogantly. Although magic can't be effective against you, I can use magic to distort the airflow, and let the rapidly rotating airflow form a cutting effect on your body. You won't be able to nullify it. This was also the reason why Hitai was able to trap Noah's feet when he softened the ground. This was because Noah could only deflect magic that was used on his body, but he could not nullify magic that was used on the ground to soften it. As for me, not only magic, as long as it's used on me, it will be nullified. Dark Knight looked directly at Noah and pursed her lips. So you can't win against me. The whole place suddenly became silent. Under everyone's gaze, Noah straightened his body and looked at his tattered coat. He frowned and stretched out his hand to tear his clothes apart. Rip! With the sound of cloth tearing, Noah's upper body was exposed, leaving only a pair of cut pants on his body. Seeing this scene, Wendy and Lucy blushed at the same time. On the other hand, Noah threw away the torn clothes and looked straight at Dark Knight. Are you done talking? Oh. Dark Knight raised her eyebrows. Are you still going to act tough? Act tough? Noah shook his head. No, I just want to tell you that you talk too much. As soon as he finished speaking, a golden ripple suddenly fluctuated in the space around Noah's body, and a spear was ejected from the ripple and shot out. With a faint sound, the spear that was shot out like a beam of light suddenly changed direction when it was about to land on Dark Knight's body. It was as if it was forcefully deflected and shot into the distance. Dark Knight, who only reacted at this time, was slightly shocked. What a fast shot! Just now, if the spear had not suddenly changed direction, Dark Knight, who did not even have time to react, would have fallen. Unfortunately, not only can my magic twist distort any object, but it can also distort all attacks, including magic. Dark Knight smiled confidently. So your attack is useless against me. Before he could finish his sentence, a sharp sword suddenly cut through space and shot in the direction of the Dark Knight. Poochie! With a clear sound of flesh being pierced, the sharp sword that was shot out like a laser directly pierced through Dark Knight's shoulder. It did not lose its momentum and directly carried Dark Knight's body away like an arrow released from a bow, nailing him to a rock. Aha! Dark Knight's screams echoed in the space. Glancing at Dark Knight, who was nailed to the rock, clutching his shoulder and crying out in pain, Noah could not help but laugh. So you talk too much. No matter what your magic is, as long as you know that it is magic, there are many ways to make you fall. After all, there are also relics used for magic, right? Chapter 1067. It was a spell that could distort anything and deflect all attacks aimed at oneself. Twist. It had to be said that the effect of this spell was very powerful, very powerful. If it was used well, even if it could not be said to be invincible, it could at least guarantee that one would not lose in a situation where one could not win. Looking at the level of magic in this world, the twist magic of the Dark Knight was probably at the same level as crushing magic. However, this type of overly powerful magic usually had an irreversible weakness. The weakness of crushing magic was that it was very difficult to control. Even Kildas was unable to control it perfectly. From time to time he would let crushing magic go out of control and cause all kinds of external damage. Noah, who also learned crushing magic, if he did not put in a lot of effort in controlling magic when he was young, then in the end, he would also not be able to completely control crushing magic. But even so, in order to completely control the shattering magic, Noah had spent a total of 4 years of training. This allowed this invincible magic to become a powerful weapon, even after fusing with the Beast Horde incarnation. One could well imagine how powerful it was. The twist magic of the Dark Knight was similar to Noah's crushing magic. One was able to crush everything. The other was able to distort everything. But naturally it had a weakness. Noah did not know where the weakness of the twist magic of the Dark Knight was. But as long as he knew that it was magic, then he could take out a noble artifact that specialized in magic and had the effect of breaking magic. If he wanted to solve it, it would be very easy. As mentioned before, the magic of this world and the magic of the moon world were basically the same. Although the two were definitely not the same mysterious, since they were both miracles that were driven by magic, then the noble artifact used for magic would be effective. In the end, there was no need to say what happened to the Dark Knight. Moreover, even if the noble artifact used for magic could not break the twist magic, Noah still had Aster. With Aster's curse resistance that was comparable to Noah's, or even above Noah's, it was believed that no matter how strong the twist magic of the Dark Knight was, Aster's elven device would be able to cut it in half. This confirmed Noah's words. There were many ways to make the Dark Knight fall. When Wendy, Lucy, and the others saw that Dark Knight's appearance had intimidated everyone present, and even caused Noah, who had always been strong, to become extremely miserable, They thought that Noah had finally met a strong opponent this time. In the end, Dark Night, the trump card of the 6 demon generals, oration cease, was pierced through by Noah's noble phantasm. Dark Night was nailed to the rock and cried out in pain. Such extreme ups and downs made Wendy, Lucy, and the others feel as if their hearts were no longer their own. The ups and downs made their hearts beat a lot faster. At this moment, in the cave, a burst of scorching red and a burst of icy blue flashed. Dong! With a dull roar, a figure flew out of the cave and smashed heavily on the ground. His head tilted and he fainted. It was none other than Cabra. Ha! Then Naz and Gray, who were gasping for breath, staggered out of the cave with bruises all over their bodies. Their faces were full of exhaustion. Behind them, Alusha and Leo also had some bruises on their bodies, but their condition was much better than Naz and Gray. As for Tura, she stood at the back of everyone unscathed. In her hand, she was also carrying Hidei, who had also fainted. Seeing this scene, even an idiot would be able to understand the result of the battle. Hee. Naz and Gray both gave a thumbs up to Noah's direction, and a victorious smile appeared on their faces. Even Alusha, Leo, and Tura looked at each other and suddenly smiled. Wendy, Lucy, and the others cheered excitedly. Noah's gaze swept over the fainted Cabra, Hidei, and Angela, who was tightly bound by chains. Then he glanced at Dark Night, who had his shoulder pierced through and was nailed to the rock, screaming in pain. He also could not help but smile. At this point, including Lisa, who was defeated by Noah at the beginning, 5 of the members of the 6 demon generals, oration cease, one of the 3 dark guilds of the Baram Alliance, were all defeated. Only one person was left. In the depths of the endless sea of trees, Brian, who was holding the skull staff, was moving unswervingly in one direction. The rest of the members of the 6 demon generals, oration cease, stayed behind to defend against the attacks of the regular guilds, and he himself would go to the location of Nirvana to remove the seal of Nirvana. He would obtain this terrifying magic that could control people's hearts and use it as a weapon to counterattack. This was the plan that Brian had laid out. It was a very simple and effective plan. If possible, Brian did not want to be so passive. The dignified 6 demon generals, oration cease, one of the most powerful guilds in the entire continent's dark world, an existence that everyone feared. Now, because of one person's interference, they had fallen into such a sorry state. This was not what Brian wanted to see. But after seeing how powerful Noah was, Brian could no longer believe that the 6 demon generals, oration cease, could defeat the magic shooters of the regular guilds. If he wanted a complete victory, it was absolutely necessary to obtain Nirvana. But now that Dark Night has awakened, maybe there is a way to deal with that man. Like Dark Night, Brian also believed that Noah could only nullify magic, while Dark Night could nullify all attacks. Their level was 1 level higher. However, unlike Dark Night, who thought that he could defeat Noah, Brian believed that Noah and Dark Knight's strength should be at the same level, and it should not be easy to determine the winner. That doesn't matter. Brian's face was gloomy. The only one who can threaten us is that man. The rest are nothing to be afraid of. As long as Dark Night can delay that man, Cabra and Hidei can take down the rest. Even if they can't, as long as I can obtain Nirvana, then everything will be over. With this thought in mind, Brian was just about to continue forward when an intense impact suddenly assaulted his mind. Goo! Brian could not help but cover his head and let out a muffled groan. At the same time, on Brian's face, on the pitch-black lines that almost covered his entire face, 3 lines slowly faded until they disappeared. This made Brian, who was holding his head, change his expression drastically. Cabra, Hidei, and Dark Night have all been defeated? Angel had been captured. Cabra, Hidei, Dark Night, and Lisa had all been defeated. Didn't that mean that other than Brian himself, the rest of the 6 demon generals, oration cease, had all fallen? Damn it. Brian heavily punched the tree next to him, his face twisted. My 6 demon generals, oration cease, was actually so weak? After saying that, Brian raised his head and looked ahead. I will definitely make you all pay. In front of Brian, there was a towering tree that clearly did not fit in with the surroundings. Furthermore, That large tree had a strange color all over its body. Looking at the big tree, Brian laughed maniacally. I've finally found you. After saying this, Brian directly stepped forward, reached out a trembling hand, and pressed it on the tree. In the next moment, a gorgeous pillar of light suddenly rose up and shot into the sky. At the front of the cave, Noah, who was watching a luscious group tie up the 6 demon generals' oration cease, suddenly felt a strange magic surge from the depths of the forest, causing his heart to tighten. He quickly turned his head and looked into the distance. What is that? Besides Noah, Wendy, who was the first to discover the abnormality, also exclaimed and pointed into the distance, attracting everyone's attention. In the next moment, the scene of a pillar of light shooting into the sky was imprinted in everyone's eyes. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.